Hello, and welcome to the Sleepy Explorer. If you've found yourself here tonight, perhaps you're looking for a peaceful way to drift off, somewhere between curiosity and calm. Tonight, we'll be journeying through the land of blue-domed chapels, olive trees swaying in the breeze, and ancient ruins bathed in moonlight. Greece, where history and myth walk hand in hand, and where the sea seems to whisper old stories just for you. Now, before we begin, I must offer a small warning. I do hope this video isn't too interesting. The goal is to gently lull you into sleep, not keep you wide-eyed at 2 in the morning wondering about the diet of ancient Spartan warriors. But if you do happen to stay awake a little longer than planned, well, at least you'll come away knowing something new. If you're enjoying this gentle journey, I'd be ever so grateful if you tap the like button and perhaps even subscribe to the channel. It helps the Sleepy Explorer keep wandering the world by moonlight, one story at a time. I'd also love to know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. Are you nestled under heavy blankets as midnight rolls in, or watching the sky darken just after dinner? Let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading your responses. So, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders relax. The world can wait until morning. For now, we'll travel together, slowly, softly, through the olive groves, marble ruins, and mythical dreams of Greece. And of course, just a gentle reminder, this video is not medical advice or a substitute for proper sleep care. It's simply a soft companion for your night. Where is Greece? It's the kind of question that seems simple until you really stop to think about it. Nestled in the southeastern corner of Europe, Greece stretches like a question mark between the Ionian Sea on the west and the Aegean on the east, with the deep blue Mediterranean embracing its southern edge. It's a country both tucked away and right in the thick of things, a sun-baked bridge between Europe, Asia, and Africa, where east meets west and old meets older. Greece shares land borders with Albania, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Turkey, but it's really the sea that defines it. The Greek coastline is one of the longest in the world, a shimmering outline carved by thousands of years of wind, salt, and myth. It's a country made of water as much as land, with over 6,000 islands and islets scattered like breadcrumbs across the waves. Of those, around 227 are inhabited. Some are famous, like Santorini, with its sugar cube houses perched on volcanic cliffs, or Mykonos with its dancing windmills and late-night glamour. Others are quieter, dustier, perhaps even forgotten. But each has its own rhythm, its own story, and its own loyal goat population. The mainland is no less diverse. Northern Greece is rugged and green, with dense forests, mountains that seem to touch the sky, and villages where time still moves at a dignified shuffle. Central Greece, or Steria Elida, is the land of ancient Thebes and sacred Delphi. To the west lies the Peloponnese, a hand-shaped peninsula joined to the mainland by a narrow bridge, a place of warriors, poets, and olive groves. And then there's Athens, sprawling and chaotic, where motorbikes whiz past marble columns and graffiti climbs ancient walls like ivy. Greece is roughly the size of Alabama, or about 1/5 the size of France, but it contains multitudes. In just a few hours, you can drive from snow-dusted mountains to sun-soaked beaches. 1 minute, you're sipping coffee in a bustling square, and the next, you're in a sleepy village where the loudest sound is the clanging of sheep bells. The terrain is famously mountainous, About 80% of the land is hilly or rugged, which is why, for much of its history, Greek life developed in fiercely independent city-states. Geography encouraged separation, and separation encouraged diversity. Even the light in Greece feels different. It's hard to describe unless you've seen it yourself. A golden, almost honey-coloured glow that makes everything seem a little more vivid. The sea sparkles, the marble shines, the whitewashed houses seem to hum in the sun. And the smell, oh, the smell, the scent of wild thyme, roasted lamb, sun-warmed dust, and salt hangs in the air like an invitation. Add a distant church bell and the clink of coffee cups, and you've got the soundtrack to a perfect Greek afternoon. But let's not romanticize too quickly. Greece is not a postcard. It's real and alive, full of contradictions and complications. Athens, the capital, is a tangle of modern sprawl and ancient grandeur. It's loud and sometimes chaotic, with traffic jams and strikes and more than a few impatient taxi drivers. But it's also a city of art, defiance, and soul. You might see a centuries-old Byzantine church sandwiched between a high-rise apartment block and a kebab shop, or stumble across a street performance happening right in front of a marble ruin. There's an energy to it. Some call it frenzied, others call it passionate, and both are probably right. Then there are the islands, each with their own personality. Crete, the largest, is bold and proud, a kingdom unto itself with its own traditions, music, and dialect. The Dodecanese feel like an echo of Asia Minor, while the Ionian Islands have a Venetian lilt to their speech and architecture. The Cyclades, those famous sun-bleached beauties, look like they were made for postcards. Cliffside churches with blue domes, narrow alleys paved with white stones, and donkeys clip-clopping down steep lanes. The sea is more than just a backdrop in Greece. It's a lifeline, a myth maker, and often a challenge. For thousands of years, Greeks have lived with, on, and through the sea. Fishermen still cast their nets at dawn. Ferries crisscross the Aegean like clockwork. Sea stories are passed down like heirlooms. The sea connects the island and the people, but it also separates them, creating a sense of local identity that's fiercely held. Ask someone where they're from in Greece, and they'll probably give you the name of their island or village before they say Greece. There's pride in place, even in the smallest of places. And yet, despite all this regional variety, there's a certain thread that ties the whole country together. Something warm and generous and unmistakably Greek. It's in the way strangers are welcomed like family. It's in the slow afternoons where the only agenda is sipping coffee and watching the world float by. It's in the spontaneous dance that breaks out after a long meal, or the way the baker knows your grandmother's name. There's a word for this spirit, philotimo, a complex, untranslatable concept that mixes honour, kindness, pride and duty. It's one of those things you can only understand by feeling it. The air in Greece is thick with stories. Every rock, every hill seems to have something to whisper. That mountain, Zeus was born nearby. That spring, the Muses once bathed there. That olive tree, it might be older than your country. Myth and geography are hopelessly entangled here, and locals often switch between history and legends without skipping a beat. Was that cave really the entrance to the underworld? Did Achilles really train on that beach? Probably not, but maybe. The point is never whether it happened exactly as told. The point is that the story lives on. echoing through generations like a lullaby. The weather too plays its part in the Greek experience. Summers are hot and dry, with skies so blue they seem digitally enhanced. Winters vary, from mild and rainy in the islands to snowy and crisp in the mountains. Spring is perhaps the most magical season, when wildflowers burst into colour, almond trees bloom, and the land hums with life. It's a good time to visit if you want to avoid the crowds and still catch the soul of the place. And let's talk about the sun. In Greece, the sun isn't just something that happens in the sky. It's a presence, almost a character in daily life. It burns, yes, but it also softens. It warms the bones, fades the buildings, and slows the pace of life. People walk differently in the heat, slower, more deliberate. Shops close in the afternoon for mesameri, the sacred siesta hours, and the streets go quiet. Even time takes a break. For all its ancient roots, Greece is very much a modern country. It's a member of the European Union, uses the euro, and has its share of technology and turmoil. The last few decades have brought economic challenges, waves of migration, and rapid shifts in lifestyle. But somehow, through all of it, Greece manages to hold on to its essence. Modern apartment blocks may rise where philosophers once debated, but the spirit of inquiry, beauty, and resilience remains. There's a rhythm to life here that resists hurry. Meals are not rushed, conversations are not brief, and silence is not awkward. People make eye contact, they ask about your family, they remember your name. Even the cats, of which there are many, seem to know their role in this slow theatre of sun and shadow. So where is Greece? It's on the map, yes, but it's also in the olive oil you drizzle on bread, in the laugh that spills over ouzo at a seaside taverna, in the faded fresco on a monastery wall. It's in the song sung at sunset, in the thud of feet on a dance floor, in the quiet smile of a fisherman mending his net. Greece is a place, but more than that, it's a feeling. A mosaic of land and sea, myth and moment, ancient and ever-changing. And if you listen closely, you might just hear it calling to you, not with urgency, but with gentle insistence. Not a shout, but a sigh, a whisper carried on the wind, across the mountains and down to the shore, saying simply, "Come, stay a while, there's more to see. But not just yet. First, let's rest." Time has a strange way of moving in Greece. It stretches and folds like linen in the sun, wrapping itself around marble ruins, Byzantine churches, village squares, and motor scooters zipping through ancient alleyways. Here, time doesn't march. It meanders. It pauses for coffee. It takes a nap in the afternoon. It doubles back on itself when you least expect it, as if reminding you that the past is never really gone. It's just living quietly underneath the present. To walk through Greece is to walk through time, often without even meaning to. You might be standing in line for gelato, and suddenly notice that you're leaning against a wall built before the birth of Socrates, or wandering through a neighbourhood and realise the paving stones beneath your feet once led to a temple where people asked questions of the gods. Here history is not kept in glass cases. It's part of the scenery. It shows up in your lunch, in your street names, and sometimes in your dreams. Let's begin softly with the very beginning, or at least as close as we can get to it. Long before the Parthenon stood in gleaming glory atop the Acropolis, and long before Athens became the intellectual heart of the Western world, there were the Minoans. The Minoan civilization flourished on the island of Crete from around 3000 BCE to roughly 1100 BCE. That's a lot of candles on the birthday cake. The Minoans were traders, artists, engineers, and possibly the first Europeans to build something like a city. Their palaces, especially the grand one at Knossos, had multiple stories, light wells, plumbing systems, and rooms decorated with vibrant frescoes. Dolphins, flowers, dancing figures, and scenes of bull leaping. Yes, bull leaping, a kind of ancient extreme sport involving flipping over a charging bull. Whether it was a religious rite, a courtly performance, or just an early version of "don't try this at home," no one is entirely sure. But as graceful as the Minoans were, they were also vulnerable. Their power waned, perhaps due to a massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, that sent tsunamis crashing into their ports and darkened the skies for months. The eruption around 1600 BCE was one of the largest in recorded history. Some believe it may have inspired the legend of Atlantis. In any case, by the time the Mycenaeans showed up, the Minoans were already fading. The Mycenaeans were a different breed: warrior kings, palace fortresses, and lots of bronze. They ruled from places like Mycenae and Pylos on the mainland, and are best remembered for their role in the legends of the Trojan War. If you've ever heard of Helen of Troy, Achilles, or that whole bit with the wooden horse, you're dealing with Mycenaean-era storytelling. These were the people whose culture inspired Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, epic poems so influential that they're still required reading in many schools, much to the delight or dismay of sleepy students everywhere. And then, for reasons not entirely understood, the Mycenaeans disappeared. Around 1200 BCE, many civilizations in the eastern Mediterranean collapsed. The reasons are debated: climate change, invasions, internal strife. But Greece entered what's called a dark age, a time of population decline and cultural slowdown. But even in darkness, seeds were growing. By around 800 BCE, those seeds had begun to sprout. This is when Greece stepped into what we call the Archaic period. Small city-states, known as polis, began to emerge. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes. Each was fiercely independent, with its own government, army, and way of life. They shared a language, gods, and love of competition, but they rarely agreed on much else. And when they weren't fighting outsiders, they were often fighting each other. This competitive spirit, however, birthed something extraordinary. In Athens, a new idea began to take shape: democratia, or power of the people. Around 500 BCE, under leaders like Cleisthenes and later Pericles, Athens experimented with a form of direct democracy. Citizens could vote on laws, hold office by lottery, and even ostracize dangerous politicians by popular vote. Of course, this system only applied to free male citizens. Women, slaves, and foreigners were left out. But for its time, it was a radical notion. And Athens didn't stop at politics. This was the classical period, the Golden Age, the time when drama, philosophy, science, and sculpture all seemed to blossom at once. Imagine walking through the Agora and seeing Socrates debating under a tree, or catching a play by Sophocles at the theatre of Dionysus. You could visit the Gymnasium and bump into Plato, or watch the construction of the Parthenon, while Pericles gives a rousing speech about civic duty. It was a whirlwind of ideas, marble dust, and olive oil. Meanwhile, not far away, Sparta was doing its own thing. Where Athens prized words and wit, Sparta prized silence and discipline. Their society was built around military excellence and every citizen was trained for war from childhood. The saying, "Come back with your shield or on it," was not metaphorical. It was a mother's way of telling her son to be brave or die trying. Spartan culture was harsh, austere, and completely different from the artistic flourish of Athens, but it held a certain raw appeal. Eventually, these two powers clashed in the Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict that lasted nearly 30 years and weakened both sides. As the city-states fought, a new force was rising in the north, Macedon. Under King Philip II and his son, a young man named Alexander, Macedon transformed from a backwater kingdom into an empire. Alexander the Great, as he would come to be known, took the teachings of Aristotle, the tactics of his father, and the ambition of 10 lifetimes, and set out to conquer the known world. And he nearly did. From Greece to Egypt to India, Alexander spread not just armies, but culture, founding cities, promoting the Greek language, and blending East and West in a whirlwind of campaigns that ended only with his death at age 32. The Hellenistic period that followed was one of cultural diffusion. Greek became the language of learning, trade, and governance across a vast region. Philosophers taught in Alexandria. Sculptors carved gods for distant temples. Greek drama played to audiences in Asia Minor. Even as power shifted away from Greece itself, its ideas were going global. And then came the Romans. The Romans didn't destroy Greek culture. They adopted it, revered it, even tried to outdo it. Roman generals admired Greek philosophy. Roman architects copied Greek columns. Roman poets quoted Greek tragedies. In a way, Greek culture survived by teaching its conquerors how to think, build, and write. By the time of the Byzantine Empire, which rose from the eastern half of the Roman world, Greece had become a crucial province in a Christian empire. The Byzantine period, lasting from the 4th to the 15th century, saw a shift from marble gods to golden icons, from temples to churches. Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, became the new cultural centre. But Greek remained the dominant language, and Orthodox Christianity became the heart of spiritual life. This was a time of mosaics and monks, hymns and holy relics. Monasteries were built in the most improbable places, like Meteora, where stone towers rise from the valley floor like something out of a dream, crowned with chapels that seem to float in the clouds. But empires, like everything else, must eventually fall. In the 15th century, the Ottoman Turks conquered Constantinople and much of Greece. What followed was nearly 400 years of Ottoman rule. It was a time of heavy taxation, suppressed identity, and occasional rebellion, but also of cultural resilience. The Greek Orthodox Church played a crucial role in preserving language and tradition. Folk songs and dances kept history alive in secret. Even under occupation, the soul of Greece endured. In the early 19th century, a spark caught fire. Inspired by the ideals of the Enlightenment and fueled by centuries of longing, the Greek War of Independence began in 1821. It was a fierce and uneven struggle marked by brutal battles, heroic tales, and international sympathy. Poets like Lord Byron even came to fight alongside the Greeks. By 1830, after nearly a decade of bloodshed and diplomacy, Greece was officially recognised as an independent nation. The modern Greek state was born, a young country with an old soul. The 19th and 20th centuries brought rapid change. Borders shifted. Monarchies rose and fell. Greece was drawn into wars, alliances, and occupations. In the Second World War, the country endured invasion, resistance, and civil war. In the late 20th century, a military dictatorship briefly seized power before democracy was restored. Through it all, the people remained resilient, proud, and deeply connected to their land. Today's Greece is a republic, a member of the European Union, a nation still navigating economic ups and downs, but never losing its essential character. Walk the streets of Thessaloniki or Heraklion, and you'll find Byzantine churches next to bookstores selling Plato and Plato's Republic, next to a bakery making ancient-style sesame bread, next to someone scrolling through TikTok. It's all there. The past doesn't disappear. It simply joins the conversation. And sometimes it surprises you. Maybe you'll be hiking on a trail near Delphi, and you'll see a goat leap from a ledge with perfect theatrical timing. Maybe you'll hear a grandmother telling a myth to her grandchild, as if it were news from the next village. Maybe, just maybe, you'll feel the hush of time settling around you. Not as a weight, but as a gentle hand on your shoulder. Because in Greece, time is not a straight line. It loops. It lingers. It dances. And if you're lucky, it invites you to dance with it. People in Greece don't just live in a place, they belong to it. Not in the way one might say they're from somewhere, but in the deeper, bone-deep way that suggests roots rather than coordinates. You can feel it when a shopkeeper gestures to the mountains and says, "My grandfather planted olives there," or when a fisherman points out to sea and says, "That's where my father taught me to swim." There is a heartbeat that ties Greeks to their land, to their ancestors, and to each other. It is strong, stubborn, and remarkably warm. Let's begin with the language. The Greek language is not just a tool for communication. It's a thread that stretches back over 3,000 years. It's the oldest recorded living language in Europe, and perhaps the world. While modern Greek has certainly evolved from the days of Homer and Aristotle, it carries with it the echoes of ancient syllables. Words used in everyday life, like psyche, meaning soul, or agape, meaning love, have changed surprisingly little over the centuries. Even when the grammar has shifted, the music of the language remains. Modern Greek sounds lyrical, even when someone is simply ordering coffee. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of verbal dance with soft consonants, breathy vowels, an emphasis that rises and falls like waves. And it's spoken with emotion. A Greek conversation often involves hands, eyebrows, and at least one dramatic pause. It's not uncommon to hear an elderly man arguing passionately at a cafe over a football match from 1982 as though it happened yesterday. Names, too, carry significance. Many Greeks are named after saints, and there's a tradition of celebrating name days, the feast days of the saints for whom people are named. For example, someone named Georgos might celebrate on St. George's Day, receiving visits, phone calls, and sweet treats. In some regions, name days are more important than birthdays. And yes, it's perfectly normal to know 10 people named Maria and still be able to tell them apart with affectionate nicknames, village affiliations, or family connections. Now let's talk about philoxenia, often translated as hospitality, though that word hardly does it justice. Philoxenia literally means friend to strangers, and it's not just a custom, it's a deeply held value. Offering food, drink, or a seat to a guest is not a gesture of politeness. It's a sacred duty, one rooted in both ancient myth and Orthodox Christian tradition. In the tales of Homer, gods often visited mortals in disguise to test their kindness. That spirit endures. Even today, if you walk into a village and look the slightest bit lost, it's likely someone will offer you a glass of water, a plate of fruit, or possibly an entire meal. This generosity extends to everyday life. A neighbour might drop off a container of Gemistar, stuffed tomatoes and peppers, just because they made too much. A baker may give a child a cookie for the road. And there's a special kind of Greek hospitality that involves insisting you eat more, even when you're clearly full. It's an affectionate battle, usually ending with someone sneaking an extra dolma onto your plate when you're not looking. Greek life is centered around family, and family doesn't just mean the people you live with. It means cousins, second cousins, great aunts, the neighbour who watched you grow up, and the man at the market who's been selling your family lemons since 1965. In Greek families, generations often live close to one another, if not under the same roof. Grandparents are integral, not just as babysitters, but as keepers of wisdom, tradition, and excellent food. Respect for elders is deeply embedded in the culture. It's not uncommon to see young people kissing their grandparents' hands or standing to offer a seat. The opinions of papos and yaya, grandfather and grandmother, carry weight, often more than that of politicians or academics, and they are storytellers. Ask a Greek grandparent about their youth, and you may hear tales that start with war, continue through famine, and somehow end in a lesson about olive oil. Ceremonies mark the rhythm of life, and they are celebrated with feeling. Greek weddings are joyful marathons, filled with dancing, feasting, and the occasional plate smashing. The ceremony itself is rich with symbolism. Crowns tied together to represent unity, candles lit to signify the light of Christ, and more kisses than you can count. After the formalities, the music begins, and often doesn't stop until the early hours of the morning. Dances circle and spiral, each step rooted in centuries of tradition. On the other end of the spectrum are funerals and mourning rituals, which are just as meaningful. Mourning is not hidden, it's lived, shared, and expressed openly. It's not unusual for widows to wear black for years, sometimes for life. Memorial services are held 40 days after death, and again at 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, and beyond. Small plates of kaliva, boiled wheat mixed with sugar and spices, are offered as a tribute to the dead, a sweet and sacred tradition. Religion intertwines with daily life, even for those who may not attend church regularly. The Orthodox faith is deeply embedded in the Greek psyche. Icons adorn walls, candles flicker in roadside shrines, and bells ring out from whitewashed chapels. It's common to make the sign of the cross when passing a church, or to light a candle in memory of someone dear. These rituals are not always grand. They're quiet moments of connection, a way of carrying the past forward. And then there's the cafe, the true nerve centre of Greek social life. You'll find them in every town and neighbourhood, ranging from chic urban hangouts to sleepy village establishments, with 2 tables and a stray cat. These cafes are not places to rush. They are places to linger. Coffee can last an hour or more, and the conversation might range from local gossip to world politics to the proper way to prepare frappe. Many older men gather in kafenia, where they nurse tiny cups of Greek coffee and play tavli, a fast-paced backgammon game punctuated by clacking dice and occasional bursts of triumph or despair. In the evenings, the cafes fill with people of all ages, families, students, retired neighbours. It's a scene of laughter, hand gestures, and clinking glasses. Sometimes someone brings a bouzouki and plays a song. Sometimes people sing. Sometimes no one says much at all, content just to sit in the twilight with a breeze on their face. Food, of course, plays a central role in Greek identity, but more than the ingredients or recipes, it's the ritual of sharing that matters most. Meals are rarely eaten alone. Even a simple lunch becomes an event, especially on Sundays. Dishes are placed in the centre of the table, and everyone helps themselves. Conversation flows, time slows, and no one leaves hungry, ever. There's a phrase that sometimes surfaces in Greek conversation, den perase. It means roughly, never mind, or it doesn't matter. It's a small phrase, but it speaks volumes. It's what someone might say when a glass is broken, when a plan changes, or when a ferry is late. It's a shrug, a smile, an acceptance. A reminder that life is imperfect and that's okay. It's a key part of the Greek temperament. Resilient, adaptable, and seasoned with humour. There's also an undercurrent of melancholy in the Greek soul, what some might call kephi when it rises and xeneros when it dims. Kephi is that joyous, spontaneous spirit that makes people dance at weddings, toast strangers, and belt out old songs after one too many glasses of ouzo. It's a celebration of life in its most vibrant form. But there is also xeneros, a kind of quiet sorrow or weariness that is never far away. Greeks are comfortable with both. They understand that joy and sorrow live side by side like the sun and the sea. Greece has a long history of migration and diaspora. Economic hardship, war, and political upheaval have sent waves of Greeks abroad, to Australia, Canada, Germany, the United States, and beyond. But no matter how far they go, Greek communities abroad often maintain strong ties to home. Greek Orthodox churches, language schools, and cultural festivals keep traditions alive in new lands. And the dream of return is always present. Patrida, the homeland, never fades. Modern Greeks straddle many worlds. They text with emojis, protest with passion, and post selfies in front of temples built 25 centuries ago. They are as likely to discuss Plato as they are to debate reality television. This blend of old and new is part of the charm. A teenager might blast pop music from a scooter while wearing an evil eye bracelet their grandmother gave them for protection. A young couple might meet through a dating app and then have their wedding blessed with a ritual older than Christianity. There's something deeply rooted in the Greek character, a fierce love of freedom, a stubborn streak, a reverence for beauty, and a capacity for laughter in the face of difficulty. History has not always been kind to Greece. Earthquakes, invasions, economic collapse. Yet somehow the people endure, and not just endure, but sing, dance, cook, and argue their way through. If you were to ask a Greek person what makes them proud, they might talk about ancient philosophers or Olympic heroes. But just as often, they'll tell you about their village, about a festival in the hills, about a grandfather who played the lyra, about a mother who made the best doll maids in town. This is the heartbeat of the people. Not just the grand achievements carved in stone, but the small moments passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. It is in the language, in the laughter, in the long Sunday lunches, in the scent of rosemary on roasted potatoes, and in the stories that echo across the hills at dusk. In Greece, people don't just live, they live out loud. They live with feeling. And they live together. Spirituality in Greece is not confined to churches or holy days. It's in the air, the soil, the sea breeze. It's stitched into everyday life, quietly, persistently, like the sound of a distant bell at dusk, or the scent of incense drifting out of a chapel perched on a cliff. Religion in Greece doesn't whisper. It hums. It sings. It dances with myth, history, and the daily rituals of a people whose sense of the sacred is as old as the olive trees and just as deeply rooted. Let's begin with the obvious presence: Eastern Orthodoxy. Greece is one of the most devoutly Orthodox Christian countries in the world, and the Greek Orthodox Church plays a central role in shaping both public and private life. Churches are everywhere, in cities, villages, roadside hills, and sometimes, quite impossibly, on the edge of a sea cliff. Some are large and grand, with soaring domes and gold-plated icons. Others are no bigger than a tool shed, tucked beneath a fig tree or built into a cave. And yet each one feels alive, lit with flickering candles, adorned with age-darkened paintings, and filled with that unmistakable scent of beeswax and frankincense. The Orthodox Church in Greece is not just a religious institution, it is a cultural backbone. It survived centuries of Ottoman rule, protected the language during times of foreign occupation, and continues to be deeply intertwined with identity. Even for Greeks who consider themselves non-religious or secular, Orthodoxy is often still the family religion. Babies are baptized with ceremonies that involve holy oils, symbolic haircutting, and plenty of proud godparents. Weddings follow strict sacramental rituals. And funerals. Funerals in Greece are profound events that blend sorrow, prayer, and remembrance over many days and months. In daily life, it's common for people to light a candle when passing by a church, even if only for a moment. Names of saints are called out in conversation. People cross themselves when driving past a chapel or hearing bad news. There's a living familiarity with saints, feast days, and religious stories. They are not distant figures locked in stained glass. They are old friends. St. George slays dragons. St. Demetrius protects the north. St. Nicholas calms the sea. And then there are the icons. These are not just religious art pieces. In Orthodox theology, icons are seen as windows into the divine. Painted according to strict tradition, and often blessed before use, icons adorn homes, businesses, cars, even ferryboat cabins. They depict Christ, the Virgin Mary, and a host of saints, each with their own distinct features and posture. In times of trouble, people pray before them. In times of joy, they give thanks. Many families have an ikonostasi, a small shrine in their home where they keep their most cherished icons, candles, and even a sprig of basil or blessed water from Epiphany. And yet, Orthodoxy in Greece isn't loud, it isn't showy, it's something quieter, something felt more than flaunted. It's in the quiet rhythm of a grandmother crossing herself before stirring a pot, in the hush of a monastery courtyard at sunrise, in the chorus of midnight bells on Easter, when the flame of resurrection is passed from candle to candle, and the entire town glows with flickering light. But this spiritual landscape is older than Christianity. Long before St. Paul preached in Athens, Greece was home to gods that lived in trees, seas, clouds, and caves. The ancient polytheistic beliefs, with their vast pantheon of divine personalities, shaped the landscape both literally and metaphorically. Mountains were sacred, Mount Olympus being the most famous, of course, as the home of the 12 Olympian gods. Rivers were gods. Springs were goddesses. Even certain stones were believed to hold divine energy. The ancient Greek worldview was animated. Everything had a soul. The line between the natural and supernatural was porous. A tree might be sacred. A breeze might carry a warning. A sudden illness could be a message from the gods. And while the old temples may lie in ruins, many of these beliefs never fully disappeared. They simply adapted. To this day, one can find echoes of ancient rituals in modern practices. For example, the practice of leaving offerings, candles, flowers, coins, at chapels or roadside shrines bears a strong resemblance to offerings once made at temples of Athena or Apollo. Certain festivals retain elements of older fertility rites, just dressed in Christian clothing. The way villagers still celebrate the blooming of spring or the harvest of grapes often contains elements of ancient Dionysian rites, where the god of wine and ecstasy was honoured with dance, song, and not a little wine. Superstition also plays a role in the spiritual life of many Greeks, blending faith and folk belief in fascinating ways. One of the most iconic examples is the Mati, the evil eye. The belief in the evil eye exists across many cultures, but in Greece it is a particularly potent symbol. It's believed that envy or excessive praise, even if well intended, can bring misfortune. To guard against this, people wear blue glass beads, hang eye-shaped charms in their homes, and keep small silver pins on babies' clothes. If someone starts yawning or feeling dizzy after being complimented, an older relative might perform a ritual prayer to remove the curse. It's called zimatiasma, a kind of spiritual de-wrinkling. Charms and rituals abound. People spit lightly, not in disgust, but symbolically, to ward off bad luck. 3 light spits after a compliment is traditional, accompanied by a cheerful ftu, ftu, ftu. Salt is thrown behind shoulders, garlic is hung over doors, and basil is used to bless the house on feast days. And then there's Mount Athos. Also known as the Holy Mountain, Mount Athos is an autonomous monastic republic located on a peninsula in northern Greece. It's home to 20 monasteries and countless smaller hermitages, and it has functioned as a self-governing community for over 1,000 years. Women are not permitted to enter Mount Athos, a rule known as the Avaton, and access for men is strictly regulated. Life on Athos is lived according to ancient rhythms, with monks rising in the dark, praying through the night, cultivating gardens, illuminating manuscripts, and tending to their souls. Visiting Mount Athos is a spiritual experience, even for the non-religious. The silence, the chanting, the light of the oil lamps flickering on stone walls. It feels like stepping into another world, one unbothered by clocks or calendars. Not far from Athos lies another sacred marvel, Meteora. The name means suspended in the air, and it's easy to see why. Here, stone pinnacles rise from the Thessalian plain like something from a dream, and perched on their summits are ancient monasteries, built by monks who once climbed the rock faces with ropes and ladders. Today, 6 of the original 24 monasteries are still active, and visitors can reach them by winding staircases carved into the rock. The view is otherworldly. The silence is profound, and the air smells faintly of thyme and candle wax. But Greek spirituality isn't confined to the sacred sites. It's in the rhythm of the calendar year, which is still marked by religious and seasonal festivals. Easter is the most important of these, a time of fasting, prayer, feasting, and fire. The 40-day Lenten period before Easter is observed with varying degrees of devotion, often culminating in a week of rituals, processions, and midnight mass. On Holy Saturday night, just before midnight, churches across the country go dark. Then, at the stroke of midnight, the priest lights a single flame from the eternal candle at the altar and chants, Christos anesti, Christ is risen. That flame is passed from person to person, and soon the entire crowd is glowing with candlelight. Bells ring, people cheer. Fireworks explode. It is a moment of shared awe. Other feasts are quieter but no less meaningful. Saints' days, harvest festivals, and local panegyria, village celebrations often centred around a church, blend religious observance with communal joy. There is prayer, yes, but also grilled meats, folk music, and dancing under the stars. Many Greeks hold a deep personal connection to a particular saint, often the namesake of themselves or a loved one. Small chapels are dedicated to these saints, on mountaintops, by springs, in olive groves. Pilgrims might walk for hours or even days to reach them, offering prayers or lighting a candle for health, fertility, or guidance. Yet amid all this spirituality, Greek life is not overly pious. There's a healthy dose of humour and contradiction. A person might fast for Lent with deep devotion, and then immediately debate which tavern serves the best lamb. Someone might wear a cross, an evil eye charm, and a tiny phallic fertility symbol all on the same necklace, just in case. There is room here for mystery and practicality to live side by side. Perhaps this is because Greek spirituality has never been about dogma alone. It's about connection to the divine, yes, but also to each other, to the land, to the rhythms of the sea and sun. It's about light, both literal and metaphorical. The light that filters through a chapel window, the light of a saint's day, the inner light of compassion and memory and joy. In the end, the spiritual landscape of Greece is not one you walk across. It's one you move through gently, like a dream. One moment you're lighting a candle in a shadowy church. The next, you're making the sign of the cross as a ferry departs. One morning you're sipping coffee beneath a monastery, and that night you're dancing at a saint's feast while the stars look on. It's a landscape shaped not only by gods and saints, but by people. Ordinary people who carry extraordinary traditions, quietly, faithfully, and often with a mischievous twinkle in their eye. Because in Greece, the sacred is never far away. It might be in a whispered prayer, or a distant bell, or a string of blue beads catching the sunlight on a fisherman's wrist. It might even be in you. Food in Greece is not just sustenance, it's culture, memory, celebration, and love all piled onto a plate, drizzled with olive oil, and served with a generous side of storytelling. It's the soft clink of cutlery under a fig tree. It's a grandmother's hands shaping dough at dawn. It's a waiter insisting, no, really insisting, you try the house specialty, even if you're already full. Greek cuisine is less about complexity and more about honesty. Simple ingredients, fresh flavours, and the belief that a meal is best when shared. Let's start with what might be called the holy trinity of Greek cooking: olive oil, lemon, and garlic. These three ingredients appear in almost everything, and for good reason. Olive oil is the liquid gold of the Greek kitchen, used not only in cooking, but also as a finishing touch on bread, vegetables, soups, and even cakes. Some families still press their own, with small olive groves passed down through generations. The taste of real Greek olive oil, peppery, grassy, golden, is enough to make even the simplest salad feel like a small miracle. Lemon brightens and balances. It's squeezed over grilled meats, mixed into sauces like avgolemono, a silky egg-lemon mixture used in soups, and stirred into marinades and desserts. And garlic, ever loyal, adds depth and warmth. It's rubbed into lamb before roasting, whipped into scordalia, a garlicky potato dip, and tucked into nearly every stew. Together, these ingredients form the foundation of a cuisine that is robust but never heavy, flavourful but never fussy. Greek meals begin with mise, a word that means taste or snack, but in reality refers to a delightful array of small plates meant for sharing. Imagine a table slowly filling with bowls of olives, crumbled feta with dried oregano, slices of cucumber and tomato drizzled with oil, warm bread, grilled octopus, and creamy dips like tzatziki, yogurt with cucumber and garlic, melitza nocelata, roasted eggplant spread, and the aforementioned scordalia. Maize is about conversation as much as consumption. The plates come slowly. The glasses of ouzo or tsiporo are refilled often, and there's no rush. Mise is a meal in and of itself, one that unfolds gently like an evening breeze. Then come the heartier dishes, each with its own story. Take moussaka, for instance, a rich, layered casserole of eggplant, ground meat, tomato, and creamy bechamel sauce. It's a dish that feels both rustic and elegant, the kind of thing you eat slowly, perhaps with a little sigh between bites. Or gemista, tomatoes and bell peppers stuffed with rice, herbs, and sometimes meat, baked until soft and bubbling. There's pastizio, a kind of Greek lasagna made with tubular pasta, spiced meat sauce, and a thick topping of bechamel. It's comforting, filling, and always made in a dish far too large for the number of guests, because leftovers are part of the plan. For something simpler but no less satisfying, there's souvlaki, skewers of grilled pork, chicken, or lamb, often served with pita bread, onions, and a dollop of tzatziki. Or gyros, the ever-popular street food where thinly sliced meat is shaved off a vertical rotisserie and wrapped in pita with fries, tomato, and sauce. It's the kind of thing that tastes best at 2 a.m. or during a lazy beach afternoon. Vegetarian options are abundant. Fasolada, a white bean soup cooked with tomatoes, carrots, and celery, is considered by many to be the national dish of Greece. It's humble but hearty, often served with olives and crusty bread. Then there's ladera, a category of dishes cooked in olive oil, usually with vegetables like green beans, okra, or eggplant. These dishes are especially popular during Lent or fasting periods when meat and dairy are avoided, though they're delicious year-round. Speaking of bread, it's essential. Fresh, crusty, and often delivered daily to village homes in wire baskets left hanging on door handles. Bread is used to mop up sauces, cradle pieces of cheese, or simply accompany every bite. It is both utensil and offering. No Greek table feels complete without it. And then there's cheese. Feta, of course, reigns supreme. It's tangy, crumbly, and often served in thick slices with a sprinkle of oregano and a splash of olive oil. But there are many others. Graviera is nutty and firm, often fried into golden slabs known as saganaki. Mizifra is soft and mild, used in sweet and savoury dishes alike. And then there's kaseri, manuri, katiki, each with its own texture, flavour, and loyal following. Now, if you have a sweet tooth, Greece will not disappoint you. Desserts here are often drenched in syrup, flavoured with nuts, cinnamon, or citrus, and made with recipes that stretch back centuries. Baklava is the queen of them all, a layered pastry made with phyllo dough, chopped nuts, and honey or syrup. It's sticky, flaky, and dangerously addictive. There's also galaktoboreko, a custard-filled pie wrapped in phyllo and soaked in lemon syrup. Or lukumades, deep-fried dough puffs drizzled with honey and sprinkled with cinnamon or sesame. These are often served at festivals, where they're eaten hot from the fryer and vanish within seconds. For something lighter, there's glyco to koutaliou, spoon sweets, preserved fruits like quince, cherry, or even watermelon rind served in thick syrup, traditionally offered to guests as a sign of welcome. Or a bowl of Greek yogurt topped with walnuts and honey, creamy and cool and just sweet enough. No meal is complete without something to sip. Greek coffee is small, strong, and served in a tiny cup with grounds that settle at the bottom. It's often enjoyed slowly, with long conversations and the occasional reading of coffee grounds for fun. There's also frappé, a cold, frothy instant coffee drink shaken with sugar and water, popular especially in the summer. On hot days, you'll find people sitting in cafes for hours with a single frappé, ice slowly melting, the spoon tapping gently against the glass. Alcoholic beverages are also part of the cultural rhythm. Ouzo is perhaps the most famous, a clear anise-flavoured spirit that turns milky when mixed with water. It's traditionally served with mezz and meant to be sipped, not rushed. There's also tipuro, a stronger grappa-like spirit, sometimes flavoured, sometimes not, but always capable of making you feel like dancing, or at least telling a good story. Wine has a long history in Greece, over 4,000 years in fact. The ancient Greeks worshipped Dionysus, god of wine and revelry, and his spirit seems to linger in the vineyards still. Greek wines range from the crisp whites of Santorini to the rich reds of Nemea. And then there's Retsina, a white or rosé wine infused with pine resin, a flavour that surprises some and delights others. It pairs well with grilled meats and nostalgia. Beyond the flavours themselves, the way Greeks eat is central to the culture. Meals are rarely solo affairs. Even a simple lunch often becomes an event, with dishes passed back and forth, toasts made, and stories shared. There is little formality, but much ceremony. You sit, you talk, you eat, you rest, and you repeat. If you're lucky, someone brings out a guitar or a bouzouki and a song breaks out, soft at first, then louder, until everyone joins in. Eating in Greece is an act of connection, not just with the people at the table, but with the past. Many dishes are tied to specific regions, seasons, or stories. You might eat a pie in Epirus and learn it's made from a recipe 5 generations old. You might taste a fish stew in the islands that's only made when a certain wind blows in the spring. You might be offered a cookie that's traditionally baked only for Easter, shaped like knots or braids, scented with orange and mastiha. Seasonality is key. Tomatoes in summer, chestnuts in autumn, lamb in spring. The markets follow the calendar, and so do the kitchens. There's a respect for the rhythm of the land and for the hard work behind each ingredient. Farmers bring their goods to market early in the morning. Fishermen rise before dawn. Shepherds tend their flocks in the mountains. And all of it ends up somehow at the table, transformed but still recognisable. In villages, you may find people still growing much of what they eat: herbs in the garden, lemon trees in the yard, chickens pecking nearby. Even in cities, small balconies are often lined with pots of mint, oregano, and basil. There is a deep knowledge of ingredients here: what to cook, when, and how. And even deeper than that, there's a belief that food is something to be honoured. In fact, there's a saying in Greece: eat with your fingers, but never with your soul. In other words, enjoy your food, be messy, be joyful, but never forget that eating is sacred. Not in a formal or religious way, but in the sense that it brings people together, creates memories, and nourishes more than just the body. So whether you're tucking into a midnight souvlaki after a long walk through the city, savouring a slow-cooked lamb stew in a mountain village, or simply spreading honey on warm bread while the sea glimmers in the distance, you are participating in something ancient, something beautiful. Because in Greece, food is not just what you eat, it's how you remember. It's how you love. It's how you live. Sound travels differently in Greece. It rises from the earth like steam from sun-warmed stones, floats in on the sea breeze, and echoes from mountain-top chapels down into olive groves and alleyways. It's in the birds that greet the morning, the bells that mark the hour, and the old man whistling a tune in a courtyard as he tends to his tomato plants. And then, of course, there's the music. Always the music. To understand Greece is to listen to it, not just the language or the conversations that flow like poetry, but the songs, the lullabies, the laments, the wedding marches, and the rebellious ballads. Greek music is a landscape of its own. It tells stories, it remembers, it mourns, it dances. And sometimes it does all of that in a single note from a bouzouki string. Let's begin with that instrument, the bouzouki. Sleek and teardrop-shaped, it looks a bit like a long-necked mandolin. Its metallic twang is instantly recognisable, somewhere between joyful and heartbreaking. The bouzouki is the soul of a genre known as rebetiko, sometimes described as the Greek blues. Rebetiko emerged in the early 20th century, born in the smoky cafes and tavernas of Athens, Piraeus, and Thessaloniki, brought by refugees fleeing from Asia Minor during the population exchanges with Turkey in the 1920s. These were people who had lost their homes and were trying to build new ones in foreign-feeling cities. Their songs reflected that, gritty, emotional, full of longing and survival. Rebetiko's songs spoke of poverty, love, prison, hashish dens, and broken hearts. They were raw and real, sometimes banned by the authorities for being too honest. But the music endured. Today Rebetiko is recognised as part of Greece's cultural heritage, and its songs are still sung, still danced to, still felt. Alongside the bouzouki, you'll often hear the baglamas, a smaller, sharper cousin, or the zouras, which sits in the middle. Together they weave intricate melodies that rise and fall like waves. Add a guitar, a rhythmic clapping of hands, and perhaps a cigarette dangling from a performer's lip, and you have the recipe for an evening of storytelling through song. But Greek music is not one thing, it's many. It varies by region, by purpose, by mood. On the islands, especially in the Cyclades and the Dodecanese, you might hear nisiotika, island songs. These are light, lilting melodies, often sung in high, clear voices and accompanied by violin and lute. They speak of sea voyages, lost lovers, and the rhythm of waves against the shore. The tempo is often brisk, made for dancing, with feet that stamp and skirts that swirl. Move to Crete, and the music changes again. Here, the lyra reigns, a pear-shaped, three-stringed instrument played with a bow. The lyra produces a sound that is haunting and expressive, capable of both fury and tenderness. Crete's traditional music is deeply proud and fiercely local. The lyrics often come from mantinades, short, rhyming couplets that express everything from love to defiance. At weddings and festivals, the lyra and the lute duel in joyful abandon, while dancers form tight, looping circles that could go on for hours. In northern Greece, especially in Macedonia and Thrace, the rhythms are slower, the tones deeper. Here you'll find the gaida, a traditional bagpipe, as well as the clarino, or Greek clarinet, which has an emotional, almost pleading sound. Songs in this region often accompany traditional line dances with complex steps and long winding melodies that feel like they belong to another time. Then there are the church hymns, psalms sung in Byzantine chant. These are often performed without instruments, using only human voices that rise in slow, echoing waves. Heard in a candlelit church, these hymns feel eternal, suspended between earth and sky. Byzantine music has its own scale, its own timing, and its own deeply meditative quality. It is music as prayer, as breath, as light. Music in Greece doesn't need an excuse. It's part of daily life. You hear it in bakeries and taxis, on beaches and balconies. A radio playing a folk song in the background. A teenager practicing guitar on a rooftop. A grandmother humming a lullaby as she folds laundry. Speaking of lullabies, Nina Nana is the traditional Greek term for a lullaby. And these songs are more than just melodies to send a baby to sleep. They are love songs, history lessons, and emotional bridges. Many are passed down from mother to daughter, sung in gentle repetition. Some are filled with sweet wishes. Sleep, my little bird, with golden wings. While others carry a trace of sorrow or longing, whispered into the night like a memory too delicate to speak out loud. Greek children grow up with music not only as background, but as inheritance. Many learn to dance before they can read. School plays, national holidays, and family gatherings often involve music and movement. Instruments are picked up not just in music class, but at home, in village squares, or at summer festivals under the stars. And when it comes to festivals, music is essential. During Panegyria, the local feast dedicated to saints, villages fill with music. Bands of musicians walk from house to house or gather in squares. There is food, laughter, and dancing until dawn. These events are not just celebrations, they are acts of communal memory. The songs played at a panegyri are often the same songs played decades, even centuries ago. In weddings, music follows every step of the journey. From the moment the bride is dressed to the walk to the church, music flows like a current. There are traditional songs for blessings, for teasing, for weeping, for celebration. During the reception, the dancing begins, led by the newlyweds and followed by relatives, friends, neighbours, and eventually everyone with feet. The Kalamatianos, Sirtosa and Samikos are just a few of the many folk dances, each with specific steps, regional variations, and musical accompaniments. Greek dances are social more than technical. Most are performed in a line or a circle, hand in hand or arm in arm. They are a physical expression of unity, rhythm, and joy. Some are slow and solemn, others wild and exuberant. A wedding dance can last 20 minutes or 2 hours. Nobody is left out. If you don't know the steps, someone will show you. And if you step on toes, it's part of the charm. Political life in Greece has also found expression through music. During times of hardship, protest songs have served as both catharsis and resistance. In the 20th century, especially during the military dictatorship from 1967 to 1974, many artists wrote coded lyrics to avoid censorship while still voicing dissent. Singers like Mikis Theodorakis used music to rally hope and defiance, blending poetry with melody in a way that stirred the heart and the conscience. Many Greek songs are built on the poetry of famous writers, Odysseus Eliades, Yannis Ritsos, Kostas Karyotakis. Lyrics are treated with reverence. Even pop songs often have a lyrical quality that feels rooted in something older, something literary. Language matters in Greek music. It's not just the melody, it's the meaning. Of course, not everything is traditional. Greece has a thriving contemporary music scene, with genres ranging from pop and rock to hip-hop and electronic. There are Greek versions of almost every global music trend. Boy bands, trap beats, indie folk, techno clubs. And yet, even in the most modern sounds, there's often a trace of the past. A sample of a folk song, a bouzouki riff, a familiar rhythm. Even Eurovision, the annual music competition known for its glitz and glitter, has given Greece a platform for blending modern pop with traditional motifs. In 2005, Greece won the contest with Helena Paparizou's My Number One, a dance track with Balkan strings and Greek percussion. Since then, many entries have played with the balance between contemporary sound and cultural heritage. Music also plays a role in national pride. Patriotic anthems and folk songs are taught in schools, sung on national holidays, and remembered at moments of collective significance. On Ohi Day, which commemorates Greece's refusal to surrender to fascist Italy during World War II, you'll hear stirring marches and nostalgic war songs played on radios and during parades. But at its heart, music in Greece is personal. It's the song you heard at your cousin's wedding, the tune your mother sang when you were sick, the CD that played during your first kiss, the live band you stumbled across at a beachside taverna, where the singer's voice cracked just slightly on the high note, and everyone applauded anyway. Greek music is both vast and intimate. It holds centuries of tradition, yet it lives in the moment. It is ritual and rebellion, heritage and heartbeat. And it does not require translation. Even if you don't speak a word of Greek, you can feel it. In the chord that tightens your chest. In the rhythm that catches your foot. In the hush that falls when the last note fades. So next time you find yourself walking through a quiet village square, or sitting on a sun-warmed stoop with the sea in the distance, listen closely. That sound in the background, it might be a violin tuning, a lyra sighing, or someone humming a tune from long ago. It might be Greece singing to you. Not loudly, just enough to let you know that you're part of the song too. Art in Greece doesn't just live in museums, it lives on the streets, in the folds of a grandmother's apron, in the curve of a clay pot, and in the bold blue shutters of a seaside home. It climbs stone walls in the form of ivy-covered frescoes. It ripples in laced tablecloths fluttering on village balconies. And it pulses beneath the marble skin of statues older than most countries. Greek creativity isn't a separate realm of life. It's woven into the everyday. It's as natural as baking bread or planting basil. It's not always formal, but it's always present. Let's begin with what the world often first associates with Greek art, the marble majesty of classical sculpture. The ancient Greeks gave us figures that seem almost too perfect to be human. Idealized forms carved with such care and detail that their skin seems soft and their eyes nearly alive. There's the discobolus, or discus thrower, frozen mid-spin. There's the Venus de Milo, poised and mysterious despite her missing arms. There's the serene gaze of the Kuroi, young male statues that stood as offerings or memorials. These works weren't just art, they were philosophy made physical. The ancient Greeks believed that beauty was closely tied to virtue, and their sculptures reflected this belief. Proportions were calculated according to mathematical ideals. Bodies were depicted not just as they were, but as they should be, strong, balanced, and harmonious. Yet there was also emotion, subtle but undeniable, carved into a tilted head or a gentle fold of drapery. But sculpture wasn't the only canvas for ancient creativity. Pottery was both functional and artistic, and ancient Greek pots are some of the most recognisable artefacts in the world. Painted with black and red figures, they tell stories of gods, heroes, everyday life, and even ancient gossip. You'll find scenes of Hercules wrestling lions, women weaving, athletes training, lovers exchanging glances. The shapes varied too. Amphorae for storage, kylixes for drinking, lekythoi for perfumes. Each vessel was carefully crafted, fired, and decorated with astonishing precision. Fast forward several centuries, and Greek art took a new direction with the rise of the Byzantine Empire. Gone were the muscular gods and flowing robes. This was a time of gold leaf, mosaics, and icons. Byzantine art was deeply spiritual. It wasn't about realism, it was about reverence. Faces were elongated, eyes were enormous, and backgrounds shimmered with gold. Every image had symbolism. Every gesture mattered. These icons weren't just decorations. They were windows into the divine, tools for prayer, and focal points for devotion. Walk into a Greek Orthodox church today, and you'll still see these icons, painted on wood, embedded in walls, or shining in candlelight. Some are hundreds of years old, darkened by time and smoke, yet still vibrant. Others are newly made, painted by hand in village workshops or monastery studios. The tradition is unbroken, passed from master to apprentice, unchanged in style, but deeply personal in expression. Mosaics are another glittering legacy of the Byzantine period. Made from tiny pieces of coloured glass, stone, or ceramic, mosaics adorned churches, palaces, and public buildings. Some depict saints and angels, others geometric patterns that seem to move as you walk past. The floor of a 5th century basilica might still reveal dolphins swimming, vines curling, or eyes watching from the corners. It's astonishing how something so precise, so intricate, could be made from fragments. But art in Greece isn't only about the grand or the ancient. Much of it is domestic, tactile, and tied to daily life. Traditional embroidery is one such treasure. Across the country, especially in rural areas and islands, women have stitched stories into fabric for generations. Each region has its own patterns and colours. Floral designs in Epirus, geometric shapes in the Cyclades, complex motifs in Crete. These aren't just decorative, they often symbolise protection, fertility, or blessing. Tablecloths, pillowcases, baptismal garments, wedding dresses, all bear the careful work of hands trained by grandmothers and great-grandmothers. Weaving is another deeply rooted craft. In mountain villages, Old wooden looms still clatter softly in shaded rooms. Wool is dyed with natural ingredients, pomegranate, walnut, saffron, and then woven into rugs, shawls, and tapestries. The process is slow, repetitive, and meditative. Patterns are memorized, not written down. Mistakes are rare and often embraced. The result is art you can walk on, wrap yourself in, or pass down to your children. In coastal towns and island villages, lace making is a quiet marvel. Tiny needles and fine threads create patterns as delicate as spider webs. These laces edge curtains, dresses, christening cloths. They're often made in the company of others. Women sitting in courtyards, chatting softly while their fingers move with practiced ease. Some families have lace pieces that are over 100 years old, preserved like heirlooms. Ceramics, too, are still an essential part of Greek craft. While ancient amphorae now sit in museums, modern potters continue the tradition. On islands like Sifnos, Skopelos, and Rhodes, you'll find studios where clay is shaped into plates, vases, and oil lamps. Some follow traditional patterns, spirals, fish, birds, while others explore bold, modern designs. The connection to earth and fire is always there. To hold a handmade Greek cup is to feel centuries of continuity. Architecture in Greece is its own kind of art. The whitewashed houses of the Cyclades, with their flat roofs, narrow alleys, and blue doors, are instantly iconic. This style wasn't designed to be charming, it was practical. White reflected the sun, narrow streets created shade, and the uniformity helped keep homes cool. But somehow it became beautiful. Add a bougainvillea vine climbing the wall, a cat lounging in a window, and you have a postcard that's also someone's home. In Athens and Thessaloniki, you'll find neoclassical buildings from the 19th century, elegant townhouses with iron balconies and pastel facades, a nod to ancient glory with a romantic twist. These buildings now sit beside modern apartments, graffiti-covered art spaces, and sleek cafes. It's a chaotic blend, but also a vibrant one. Greek cities wear their layers of history like patchwork quilts, imperfect, worn, and full of character. In recent decades, Greece has also seen a flourishing of modern and contemporary art. Painters, sculptors, and installation artists are drawing on traditional themes while exploring new media and ideas. Artists like Yannis Charouchis and Nikos Hadjikyriakos Gikis helped define a Greek modernism that embraced light, myth, and folk elements. Today, new generations of creatives are continuing that legacy, working in galleries, collectives, and street corners. Street art has become especially prominent in Athens, where blank walls have become canvases for bold murals, political commentary, and poetic slogans. Some of it is provocative. Some of it is beautiful. All of it is part of the city's pulse. During the economic crisis of the 2010s, art became a form of survival. Graffiti as resistance, paint as protest. Now, even as times have changed, the energy remains. Art festivals are held throughout the country, on islands, in villages, in abandoned factories and Byzantine ruins. From sculpture symposia to photography exhibitions, from open-air theatre to digital media, Greek creativity is constantly evolving. And yet it never forgets where it came from. One of the most fascinating aspects of Greek art is the way myth continues to inspire it. Artists still paint scenes from the Odyssey, still sculpt Aphrodite, still write songs about Orpheus. But they do it in new ways. A fashion designer might use Medusa as a motif in a runway show. A ceramicist might mould sirens into espresso cups. A filmmaker might place ancient drama in a modern setting. The mythological world is not stuck in the past. It lives on, reimagined, reshaped, and always resonant. This blending of old and new is part of what makes Greek creativity so distinctive. It's rooted in tradition, but not trapped by it. It honours heritage without being afraid to reinvent. It respects the ancestors while giving voice to the present. Even festivals often blend art and ritual. On Clean Monday, the beginning of Lent, children fly kites they've made themselves. During the carnival season of Apocryphus, people dress in elaborate costumes, some humorous, others rooted in ancient fertility rituals. On St. George's Day, villagers reenact old battles or perform dances in traditional costume. These are not museum pieces. They are living expressions of creativity and identity. There's a word in Greek, meraki. It's hard to translate, but it refers to doing something with soul, with love, with full attention. Whether it's cooking a stew, arranging flowers, or painting a wall, meraki is about putting a piece of yourself into your work. Greek art, in all its forms, is full of meraki. That's what gives it life. That's what makes it linger. So whether you're wandering through the ruins of Delphi, sipping coffee from a hand-thrown cup, admiring a hand-embroidered tablecloth, or staring up at a mural painted on a concrete wall, you are seeing the same thread, a culture that creates, that remembers, that beautifies. Because in Greece, art is not just in the past, it is in the making, the doing, the living. It is everywhere. And it's for everyone. Literature in Greece is not something tucked away on library shelves, reserved for scholars or hushed reading rooms. It's part of the landscape, woven into conversation, carved into ruins, scribbled on cafe napkins. It rises from the mouths of singers and the hands of poets. Greece is a country where stories are not just told, they are lived, repeated, sung, and cherished like heirlooms. They begin with Homer and continue today, murmured by poets watching ferries from balconies, or retold by grandmothers under fig trees. To say that Greece gave birth to Western literature is not an exaggeration. It all starts with Homer, the blind bard, whose Iliad and Odyssey are among the oldest and most enduring works in human history. These epics were composed in the 8th or possibly 9th century BCE and were passed down orally long before they were ever written down. Imagine them performed aloud beside a fire, the rhythm of the dactylic hexameter beating like a drum, recounting tales of war, gods, wrath, and the long wandering path home. The Iliad tells the story of the Trojan War, not just the battles, but the emotions. Achilles' rage, Hector's courage, Priam's grief. The Odyssey, meanwhile, is a tale of return, of cleverness and endurance. It gave us Cyclops, sirens, and Penelope's weaving. These epics are not merely historical curiosities. They remain alive in Greek education and conversation. Children grow up knowing about Odysseus, and adults still use Homeric references to describe tricky situations, cunning plans, or long journeys. But Greek literature didn't end with Homer. Far from it. The centuries that followed saw the rise of philosophers, historians, and dramatists who changed the course of global thought. Take Sappho, the poetess of Lesbos from the 6th century BCE. Her work survives only in fragments, burnt papyrus, half-remembered stanzas, but the emotion still leaps off the page. She wrote of love, longing, and the beauty of ordinary things. Her voice was personal and intimate, which was revolutionary at a time when most poetry concerned itself with gods and wars. Even today, her lines echo with tenderness and clarity. Then there's Herodotus, often called the father of history. Writing in the 5th century BCE, he chronicled the Persian Wars, but his work is as much about storytelling as it is about facts. His histories include tales of crocodile worship in Egypt, gold-digging ants in India, and dramatic monologues that may or may not have happened. Thucydides, who came shortly after, took a more analytical approach, especially in his account of the Peloponnesian War. He gave us a model of critical historical writing, clear, unsentimental, and rigorous. Greek tragedy also emerged during this golden age. In the theatres of Athens, citizens gathered to watch the great playwrights wrestle with fate, justice, and the human heart. Aeschylus gave us the Oresteia, a trilogy of blood and redemption. Sophocles created Oedipus Rex, a story that still grips audiences with its dark prophecy and unbearable truth. Euripides wrote Medea and the Bacchae, exploring passion, madness, and divine revenge. These plays were performed not in silence, but as grand civic events, with music, dancing, and masks. Everyone attended. They were a kind of national mirror reflecting hopes, fears, and collective memory. Comedy had its place too. Aristophanes, with his biting wit and bawdy humour, wrote plays that skewered politicians, philosophers, and the gods themselves. His Lysistrata, where women withhold affection to end a war, still feels startlingly modern. His satire was fearless and often absurd, but always sharp. Then there's philosophy, another form of literature, though sometimes more concerned with ideas than with plot. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. These names are carved into the bedrock of Western thought. Plato's dialogues, especially the Republic, are written with dramatic flair. They're not dry treatises, they're conversations, full of probing questions and vivid characters. Aristotle's Poetics, meanwhile, laid the foundation for literary theory, analysing tragedy, character, and storytelling in ways that still influence writers today. As the centuries passed, Greek literature continued to evolve. During the Hellenistic and Roman periods, writers like Plutarch, Lucian, and Longus explored biography, satire, and pastoral romance. Their works mixed realism with fantasy, seriousness with play. In the Byzantine era, literature took on a more religious and moral tone. Chronicles, saints' lives, theological treatises, and hymns filled the libraries of monasteries. Poets like Romanos the melodist composed hymns that were both devotional and poetic, meant to be sung in the resonant tones of Byzantine chant. Though more formal than the ancient works, these writings kept the Greek literary tradition alive through centuries of change. The Ottoman period brought hardship, but also resilience. Folk songs, laments, and oral storytelling flourished in the villages. These stories were not written down at first. They were passed from lips to ears, father to son, mother to daughter. They told of love, loss, exile, and heroism. Some were humorous, others mournful, but all carried the weight of memory. One particularly beloved form was the Demotico Tragudi, the folk song. These poems, often set to music, dealt with themes of nature, honour, romance, and national identity. They were performed at weddings, harvests, and religious festivals, often accompanied by the lyre or clarinet. Many still exist in oral form, passed down not through books, but through repetition and rhythm. In the 19th century, As Greece fought for and achieved independence, literature became a tool for national identity. Writers like Dionysios Solomos, who composed the Hymn to Liberty, now the national anthem, combined classical influences with folk rhythms and modern themes. His poetry blends grandeur with intimacy, evoking both the mountains of Greece and the soul of its people. As the modern Greek state developed, so too did its literature. In the early 20th century, poets like Kostis Palamas and Angelos Sikelianos sought to bridge ancient heritage with modern aspirations. But it was two poets in particular who brought Greek literature to the world stage: George Sepphoris and Odysseus Elatis. Sepphoris, a diplomat and poet, won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1963. His poems are spare, meditative, and deeply Greek, imbued with the sea, the ruins, and the silence between words. Elatis, who won the Nobel in 1979, wrote in vivid, sensual language, often drawing on the landscapes of the Aegean. His poem To Axion Esti is a towering achievement, part hymn, part autobiography, part mythic reimagining of Greece itself. Both poets captured the essence of a nation caught between memory and modernity. Their work is taught in schools, quoted in conversations, and even set to music by composers like Mikis Theodorakis, who helped bring poetry into everyday life with his musical adaptations. The 20th century also saw a flourishing of prose. Nikos Kazantzakis is perhaps the best-known novelist, thanks to works like Zorba the Greek and The Last Temptation of Christ. His writing is muscular, philosophical, and deeply spiritual. Zorba, with his love of life, dancing, and dramatic storytelling, became a symbol of Greek vitality, a character whose zest has charmed readers around the world. In more recent decades, writers like Margarita Karapanou, Amanda Michalopoulou, and Petros Markaris have pushed the boundaries of Greek literature further. They explore themes of identity, exile, urban life, and political tension in sharp, contemporary voices. Greek literature today is vibrant, diverse, and increasingly global, translated into many languages, performed on international stages, and discussed in academic circles and book clubs alike. Yet literature in Greece has never been confined to the page. Storytelling lives in the air. In village squares, you'll hear tales of clever priests, stubborn donkeys, and mischievous spirits. Children grow up with stories of fairies, giants, and talking animals. These folk tales are not bedtime fluff. They often contain lessons, warnings, or kernels of deep wisdom. Some are playful, others are chilling. All are remembered. Even in the cities, literature spills into daily life. Bookstores are still cherished spaces, and book fairs are popular events. Poetry readings are held in cafes. Novels are debated in living rooms. Authors are invited onto talk shows. Even graffiti can be literary. Lines from Sappho, Elatis, or anonymous street poets scrawled across crumbling walls in elegant script. Language itself is revered. Greeks love words. They discuss them, argue over them, and take joy in clever phrasing. The Greek language has changed over millennia, of course, moving from ancient Greek to Koine to Katharivousa to the modern Demotiki. But through all those evolutions, the soul of the language has remained intact. It is rhythmic, expressive, and rich with meaning. One doesn't need to be a scholar to appreciate Greek literature. It's in the songs sung at weddings, the sayings whispered at funerals, the jokes told over coffee. It's in the olive grove, the ferry ride, the midnight walk through narrow streets where the ghosts of poets might still linger. In Greece, literature is not just what is written, it's what is remembered. It's the echo of the past in a child's voice. It's the hush that falls when someone begins a story. It's the knowing glance between listeners who already suspect the ending, but still want to hear it again, just in case something's changed. Because in Greece, stories are alive. They are stitched into the fabric of life. And they are always, always worth telling. In Greece, play is not reserved for children. It's not something outgrown or tucked away with old toys. It's a lifelong companion woven into the rhythm of everyday life. Greeks do not treat leisure as luxury, they treat it as necessity. Movement, laughter, games and sport are expressions of joy, strength and community. From ancient stadiums to modern football fields, from seaside backgammon boards to impromptu dances in village squares, the playful spirit is alive and well. This might be expected from the land that gave birth to the Olympic Games. In ancient Greece, sport was more than physical activity. It was sacred. It was art. It was a way to honour the gods, especially Zeus, who presided over the grandest of all athletic festivals, the Olympics at Olympia. Held every 4 years starting in the 8th century BCE, the ancient Olympic Games brought together athletes from all across the Greek world. City-states might feud and war, but during the Games, a sacred truce was declared. Competitors gathered not only to test their strength, but to represent the glory of their homeland. Events included running, wrestling, discus, javelin, long jump, chariot racing, and the pancration, a brutal combination of boxing and wrestling with very few rules. The only real forbidden act was biting. Victors were crowned not with gold medals, but with olive wreaths. Their names were sung by poets. Statues were carved in their honour. Some returned home to citywide celebrations and even free meals for life. Winning was not simply a personal triumph, it was a communal victory. It reflected the ideals of arete, a concept meaning excellence, virtue, and the full realization of one's potential. The spirit of those ancient games lingers. You can still walk among the crumbling columns of Olympia, stand where the torch is lit before each modern Olympics, and imagine the roar of the crowd as athletes raced on a track nearly 3,000 years old. The stones remember. Modern Greece has never forgotten its athletic roots. In fact, the modern Olympic Games were revived in Athens in 1896, thanks in large part to the efforts of Frenchman Pierre de Coubertin and Greek benefactors who believed passionately in the power of sport to unite people. The first modern Olympics featured athletes from 14 nations competing in events like gymnastics, weightlifting, fencing, and track and field. More than 60,000 spectators gathered in the Panathenaic Stadium, a marble arena built on the site of an ancient racecourse. The event was a resounding success and set the stage for the global phenomenon we know today. The Panathenaic Stadium, still standing in the heart of Athens, is one of the most beautiful sports venues in the world. Built entirely of white marble, it gleams in the sun, like something out of a dream. Tourists walk its track. Concerts echo within its walls. During Olympic years, it plays host to the ceremonial handover of the Olympic flame. While Greece has a proud Olympic legacy, the most popular sport in the country by far is football, known in the United States as soccer. Football is not just a game in Greece, it's an emotion, a passion, a weekly ritual. Every major city has its own teams, often more than one, and loyalties run deep. The rivalry between Olympiakos and Panathinaikos, two of Athens' biggest clubs, is legendary. Their matches are known as the Derby of the Eternal Enemies, and the atmosphere is electric. Flares light up the stands, chants shake the stadium, emotions run high. There are flags, drums, and more than a few nervous glances from fans hoping their team wins, and their blood pressure survives. Thessaloniki, the second largest city in Greece, also boasts intense football culture, with clubs like PAOK and Aris commanding fierce loyalty. Smaller cities and islands have their own local teams, and while they may not play in the top tier, the pride and excitement are no less intense. Greek football has had its international moments of glory. The most unforgettable came in 2004, when the Greek national team shocked the world by winning the UEFA European Championship. Coached by German Otto Rehagel and built on discipline, unity, and strategy, Greece defeated powerhouse teams like France, the Czech Republic, and finally Portugal in the final match. The country erupted in celebration, streets filled with cheering fans, flags waved from balconies, strangers hugged in cafes. For many Greeks, that summer remains a golden memory, a moment when belief and teamwork carried them to the very top. Beyond professional sports, play in Greece takes many forms. One of the most beloved is tavli, or backgammon. If you walk through a Greek village or city neighbourhood, especially in the afternoon or early evening, you're likely to hear the familiar clack of dice against wood. Tavli is more than a game, it's a performance. Players banter, tease, and occasionally smack the board in frustration or triumph. Tavli can be played casually between friends or as a high-stakes test of strategy and nerves. It is often accompanied by coffee, conversation, and a general unwillingness to hurry. There are different variations of the game, such as Ports, Plakoto, and Fevga, each with its own rules and loyal fans. In many families, learning to play tavli is a rite of passage, taught by an older relative with the seriousness of a chess master. Children in Greece also grow up with a variety of traditional games. In village squares and schoolyards, they play koutso, a version of hopscotch, krifto, hide and seek, and penidia me lafi, games with guessing and mistakes. These games are passed down orally, with the rules learned through play rather than written instruction. The emphasis is on movement, laughter, and imagination. In the mountains and countryside, children and teenagers often spend hours outside, climbing trees, chasing goats, building forts. Nature is a playground. In the islands, the sea plays a central role. Swimming, diving, fishing, and sailing are part of childhood, as natural as walking. Many children learn to swim not with formal lessons, but by simply jumping in and figuring it out, guided by siblings and cousins. Greece's geography encourages outdoor activity. The landscape is a blend of mountains, forests, beaches, and valleys. Hiking is popular among both locals and visitors. Trails lead through pine-scented hills, past Byzantine monasteries, and into remote villages where a cold spring and a plate of olives await. The E4 European long-distance path passes through Greece, offering breathtaking routes for serious trekkers and casual strollers alike. Cycling is also growing in popularity, particularly in cities like Thessaloniki and Kalamata, where dedicated bike lanes and scenic routes encourage exploration. On the islands, scooters are more common than bicycles, but cycling groups are forming, and cycling events are held annually in places like Crete and Naxos. In winter, Greece even offers skiing. Yes, skiing, in a country more famous for sun and sea. Mountain ranges such as Parnassos, Kalavrita, and Vermio boast ski resorts with well-groomed slopes, cosy lodges, and stunning views. Greek families bundle up, pile into cars, and head to the snow, where snowball fights and hot chocolate await. It's a different side of the country, one that surprises many, but delights those who discover it. Of course, dancing is one of the most enduring forms of play in Greece. From ancient rituals to modern weddings, dance has always been a way to express joy, grief, unity, and defiance. Each region has its own dances, steps, and traditional music. In Crete, the pentazali is a fast, proud dance performed with high kicks and deep concentration. In Epirus, the sirtos is slow and graceful, performed in a circle that tightens and loosens like breath. The Hasapiko, once a battle dance of butchers in Constantinople, has become a staple of celebrations throughout Greece. Learning to dance is rarely formal. You watch, you try, you stumble. Someone takes your hand and leads you. The point isn't perfection, it's participation. Whether in a village festival or a city square, dance brings people together. Elders dance beside children. Strangers become friends. And for a few minutes or a few hours, everyone moves to the same rhythm. Even the sea has its games. Sailing and windsurfing are popular along the coastlines, especially in places like the Cyclades, where steady winds make for excellent conditions. In the summer, beaches fill with games of beach volleyball, paddleball, and raquettes, a kind of high-energy paddle game played dangerously close to sunbathing tourists. Swimming is a daily habit for many Greeks. It's not uncommon to see elderly swimmers doing laps at sunrise, or young friends diving off rocky cliffs at sunset. For those who prefer indoor games, Greece has a vibrant board game and card game culture. Families gather around tables for endless rounds of biriba, kolitsina, and prefa, card games that are played with as much drama as strategy. Dominoes and chess are also popular, especially among older men who treat each move like a philosophical debate. In recent years, video games have found a place in Greek homes, cafes, and clubs. Young Greeks enjoy online gaming just like their peers around the world, though it's often punctuated by real-life hangouts, debates, and lots of snacking. Gaming cafes are common in cities, and Greek developers are beginning to create games inspired by local history and mythology. And then, of course, there's the sea, the ever-present playground. It calls to all ages. Children chase waves, teens leap from docks, couples float hand in hand, elders wade in slowly, savouring the cool embrace. The sea is not just for swimming, it's for storytelling, dreaming, and remembering. Play in Greece is not confined to specific ages or locations. It happens wherever people gather, at the table, on the street, by the water, in the mountain shadow. It's in the way friends tease each other over coffee, in the way neighbours challenge each other to tavli, in the way strangers might join a line dance at a village celebration. It's joy made visible. It's movement that carries memory. It's the beating heart of a culture that understands that life, no matter how difficult, must be danced, played, and shared. Because in Greece, play is not just fun, it is philosophy, it is freedom, it is life. Festivals in Greece are not quiet affairs. They are vibrant, sprawling celebrations that flood streets with music, scent the air with grilled meat and incense, and fill the night sky with laughter and firelight. They are moments where the sacred and the joyful come together, where tradition becomes dance, and where whole communities move as one, sometimes literally, in long circles of swirling feet and linked arms. Whether you're in a tiny village tucked into the mountains or on a bustling Aegean island, there is almost always a reason to celebrate, and it's likely to involve food, music, and staying up far too late. Let's begin with the brightest of all, Easter. In Greece, Easter is not just a holiday, it's the holiday. Even for those who do not attend church regularly, Easter brings with it a sense of awe and excitement, of return and renewal. It is a spiritual and cultural cornerstone, celebrated with a depth and intensity that can surprise visitors and comfort locals alike. The preparations begin during Lent, a 40-day period of fasting and reflection. During this time, many Greeks abstain from meat, dairy, and even olive oil, replacing them with simpler foods like legumes, vegetables, and seafood. In truth, the level of adherence varies. Some keep the fast strictly, while others pick and choose their own rhythm. But the spirit of restraint is in the air, often expressed with the phrase "Kali Sarakosti," meaning "have a good Lent." Holy Week is when the energy truly shifts. Each day leading up to Easter Sunday holds its own rituals. Churches are filled with chanting and flickering candles. Bells toll slowly. Women prepare dyed red eggs, symbolizing the blood of Christ and new life. Bakeries fill with a scent of chureki, a sweet braided bread flavored with malib and orange zest, often decorated with a red egg nestled in the center. On Good Friday, a somber mood takes over. The epitaphios, a wooden representation of Christ's tomb, is carried through the streets in a candlelit procession, often followed by chanting and silence. Even in secular neighborhoods, the sound of the bells and the glow of the candles creates a hush, as if the whole country is holding its breath. Then comes Holy Saturday. Late in the evening, crowds gather at churches, holding unlit candles. As midnight approaches, the priest emerges with a flame, proclaiming Christos anesti, Christ is risen. The flame is passed from candle to candle, until the entire square glows with warm, flickering light. Fireworks erupt. Bells ring joyously. People embrace and exchange the traditional greeting, Christos anesti, and the response, Alithos anesti, truly, he is risen. After that, it's time to eat. Families return home for the magritsa, a traditional soup made from lamb offal, greens, and an egg lemon sauce. It might not sound like much, but for many, it's a beloved symbol of breaking the fast. And it's just a warm-up. The next day, Easter Sunday, is a feast of epic proportions. Lambs roast on spits, tables grown with salads, cheeses, breads, and sweets. Red eggs are cracked in a game called Sogrisma, where each player tries to break their opponent's egg without damaging their own. Laughter and music carry through the afternoon and well into the night. Easter is often described as the most Greek of holidays, not because of its religious significance alone, but because of how deeply it draws on community, tradition, and joy. It's a time when families reunite, city dwellers return to their ancestral villages, and even the most distant cousins share stories over grilled meat and wine. But Easter is just the beginning. Greece has a whole calendar full of festivals, religious, national, seasonal, and just because we can celebrations. Many villages have their own panegyri, a type of feast day often tied to the patron saint of the local church. These can range from modest gatherings with a few tables and a guitar, to full-blown parties with live bands, traditional dancers in costume, food stalls, carnival rides, and processions. Panegyria are particularly common in the summer months, when the weather is warm, the olives are ripening, and the ferry schedules are in full swing. On islands like Ikaria, Naxos, and Lesvos, these festivals can last all night. Guests, whether locals or travellers, are welcomed with food, wine, and a seat at the table. The music, often live and loud, guides the dancing, and the dancing can go on for hours. One song might last 20 minutes, with dancers weaving in and out of the circle, laughing, sweating, and somehow never missing a beat. Another significant celebration is the Dekapentavgustos, the 15th of August, marking the Dormition of the Virgin Mary. This is one of the most important religious holidays after Easter and Christmas. Pilgrims make their way to major churches dedicated to the Virgin, such as the Panagia Evangelistria on Tinos Island. The atmosphere is reverent and celebratory. Candles are lit, prayers are whispered, and afterwards there's usually a panegyri with plenty of food and dancing. On the national front, there are two major holidays that stir patriotic pride. Ohi Day, celebrated on the 28th of October, commemorates Greece's defiant refusal to surrender to Mussolini's forces in 1940. The word Ohi means no, and it has become a symbol of resistance and independence. On this day, parades are held in towns and cities across the country. School children dress in traditional costumes and wave flags. Military processions pass by solemn crowds, speeches are given, and almost every household proudly hangs a Greek flag from the balcony. Independence Day, on the 25th of March, marks the beginning of the Greek War of Independence in 1821. It also coincides with the religious feast of the Annunciation, giving the day a dual significance. Like Ohi Day, it's celebrated with parades, speeches, and a general sense of national unity. Then there's Apokries, the Greek carnival season, which takes place in the weeks leading up to Lent. Apokries means farewell to meat, and the celebration is a glorious mix of costumes, confetti, food, and festivity. Each region has its own customs, but common threads include masquerade parties, parades, satire, and plenty of music. In Patras, the country's largest carnival city, massive parades roll through the streets with floats, dancers, and elaborate costumes that rival Rio's in colour and energy. In other parts of Greece, Apokris retains a more traditional feel, with pagan-rooted rituals, masked figures, and fire dances. The Monday after Carnival Sunday is Clean Monday, Kathara Deftera, which marks the beginning of Lent. Families gather outdoors for picnics, fly kites, and enjoy a special menu of fasting foods: olives, taramosalata, lagana bread, and grilled vegetables. It's a gentle, joyful transition into a more reflective period. Christmas in Greece, though quieter than Easter, is still filled with light and warmth. One charming tradition is the decoration of boats instead of trees. Especially in coastal towns and islands, small model boats adorned with lights are placed in windows and squares. This custom honours St. Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors, and reflects Greece's deep connection to the sea. Children sing carols, or kalanda, door to door, accompanied by triangles or small drums, often rewarded with coins or sweets. The 12 days of Christmas, leading to Epiphany on the 6th of January, are filled with food, family, and church services. On Epiphany, priests bless the waters, lakes, rivers, seas, by throwing a cross into the water, followed by brave young swimmers who dive in to retrieve it. This ritual symbolises the baptism of Christ and is meant to purify and protect the waters for the coming year. In coastal towns, crowds gather to watch, cheer, and celebrate. Seasonal festivals also abound. In autumn, the grape harvest becomes an occasion for feasting and wine-making parties. In Crete and the Peloponnese, the Kazani season arrives, when locals distill chikoudia or tsipuro, strong spirits made from grape must. Families and friends gather around copper stills, sharing maize, music, and more than a few toasts. The whole process feels timeless, as though nothing has changed in hundreds of years, except perhaps the playlist. Spring brings festivals of blooming flowers and new beginnings. The 1st of May is celebrated with floral wreaths hung on doors, picnics in nature, and a sense that something gentle has returned to the earth. This day, known as Protomargia, blends ancient fertility rituals with modern appreciation for labour and renewal. Even more secular celebrations, like music festivals, book fairs, film screenings, and food expos, have a festive, almost spiritual quality in Greece. They are not just events to attend, but opportunities to gather, to connect, to eat well, and to move to music under the stars. At the heart of every Greek festival is a feeling of belonging. You don't need to know the steps to the dance. Someone will show you. You don't need to bring a dish to the table. Someone will fill your plate. You don't need to speak the language. Music, food, and joy are their own forms of communication. In Greece, a festival is never just a date on a calendar. It's an invitation to live a little more fully, to laugh louder, to dance longer, to eat better, and to remember that life, no matter how complicated, is always worth celebrating. Because in the end, Greek festivals are not about perfection. They are about presence, the moment, the togetherness, the heartbeat of a people who have weathered storms and still find reasons to sing. And as the last song fades, as the last candle burns low, as the final glass is raised in a toast, you realise that in Greece, the party is never really over. It just pauses, catches its breath, and waits for the next reason to begin again. In Greece, the landscape speaks in more than one language. It whispers through the rustle of olive leaves, roars through the winter wind off the northern peaks, and sings in the silence of blooming valleys under spring sunshine. This is not just a place of ruins and stories, though it is certainly those too, but a place alive with wild things. Goats clatter across cliffside paths. Dolphins leap in the surf. Bears leave paw prints in snowy northern forests. And in between, plants push their way through ancient stone. Herbs scent the breeze. And mythical creatures still seem to peer around the corner of reality. To begin with, Greece may be small in size, just a bit larger than the state of Alabama. But its biodiversity is astonishing. Despite covering less than 1% of Europe's landmass, Greece is home to over 6,000 species of plants, including more than 1,000 found nowhere else on Earth. From the high mountains of the north to the dry scrublands of the islands, from alpine lakes to coastal wetlands, Greece's compact geography creates a staggering variety of habitats. Let's start with the creatures that roam, fly, and swim across this varied land. The goat is perhaps the most instantly recognisable. You'll see them just about everywhere, on mountaintops, along highways, clinging to cliff edges with improbable balance. Some are wild, like the endangered kree, a kind of wild goat found primarily on Crete and a few surrounding islets. With curved horns and a noble profile, they're both shy and symbolically fierce, often associated with the island's stubborn independence. But goats are only the beginning. In the northern forests of Pindus and Rhodope, brown bears still live in the wild. These elusive animals, once nearly extinct in Greece, have made a quiet comeback thanks to conservation efforts and growing awareness. You're unlikely to see one, but their presence is felt on warning signs, in local legends, and sometimes in the paw prints left on muddy trails. Wolves also patrol the northern ranges, along with foxes, wild boar, and the shy Balkan lynx, which is critically endangered and rarely seen. In the wetlands of northern Greece, places like Lake Kirkini and the Nestos Delta, you'll find flamingos, pelicans, herons, and over 400 other bird species. Some are residents, others are migrants, stopping off on their long journeys between continents. Bird watchers from around the world come to catch glimpses of them in the reeds and skies. In the sea, the Mediterranean teems with life, though it's a quieter kind of wildness than one might expect. Dolphins are a fairly common sight, especially in the Ionian and Aegean seas. Playful and curious, they often follow boats, delighting passengers with their aerial flips. Less commonly, you might spot the Mediterranean monk seal, one of the world's rarest marine mammals. These gentle creatures haul themselves onto remote beaches and sea caves, especially in the northern Sporades, where a national marine park helps protect their dwindling numbers. Sea turtles, particularly the loggerhead turtle or caretta, also make Greece their home. Each summer, female turtles return to sandy beaches in Zakynthos, Kyparissia, and Crete to lay their eggs. Conservation groups watch over the nests, protecting them from predators and overly enthusiastic beachgoers. Seeing a hatchling scramble toward the surf is one of the most magical sights the country has to offer. Not all Greek wildlife is large or rare. The smaller creatures are just as fascinating. Lizards skitter across sun-baked rocks. Hedgehogs rustle in garden hedges. In spring and early summer, butterflies float through meadows in dizzying abundance, including the rare southern festoon and the striking swallowtail. On the island of Rhodes, the Valley of the Butterflies becomes a fluttering haven every August, when thousands of Jersey tiger moths gather to mate, coating tree trunks and branches in a living mosaic. And then there's the mythical wildlife. You don't need to believe in legends to feel their presence. The mountains are full of echoes, perhaps of centaurs clattering through the trees, like in the old tales of Mount Pelion, where the wise Chiron was said to live. The sea has its sirens too, not just in Homer's epics, but in the hush that sometimes falls between waves. The Minotaur, with his labyrinth on Crete, is no longer feared, but his story lingers in the maze-like streets of ancient cities. These myths blur beautifully into the real landscape. In Greece, nature and myth are never very far apart. A cave might be the birthplace of a god. A spring might be blessed by nymphs. A particularly old oak tree might still be whispered to after dark, just in case. The plant life, too, tells a story. Greece is a land of symbolic flora. The olive tree, of course, is king. Cultivated for more than 6,000 years, it is both food source and sacred emblem. According to myth, the first olive tree was planted by the goddess Athena in a contest to win the favour of the city that now bears her name. Poseidon offered a salt water spring. Athena offered an olive tree, and thus Athens was born. Today, olive trees are everywhere. They grow twisted and ancient, some with trunks so gnarled they look like they've been carved by time itself. Then there's the laurel, sacred to Apollo, used to crown poets and athletes. The bay leaves it produces flavour soups and stews, but they also carry the whisper of oracles and temples. Cypresses rise tall and solemn, often found in cemeteries, their vertical shape a symbolic link between earth and sky. The pomegranate, with its crimson seeds, symbolises fertility, death, and rebirth. It's traditional to smash one on the ground at New Year's for luck and abundance. Herbs play a starring role in both cooking and folk medicine. Oregano, thyme, sage, rosemary all grow wild, especially in rocky places where little else thrives. They scent the hillsides and are gathered by hand, dried in bunches, and stored in kitchen cupboards across the country. Chamomile and mountain tea, Tsai Tuvunu, are brewed as natural remedies for everything from colds to sleeplessness. For centuries, these herbs have been used to heal and soothe. Their use is passed down orally by grandmothers and village healers. Springtime in Greece is a kind of miracle. After the rains of winter, the land bursts into colour. Poppies flame in the fields. Wild orchids hide in the grass. Almond trees bloom with delicate pink-white flowers that look like snow in sunlight. The air is filled with bees and the slow buzz of renewal. Even the most arid islands put on a brief, brilliant display. Tiny yellow daisies, blue cornflowers, purple clover. Summer, by contrast, is dry and crisp. Hills turn golden. The air smells of dust, salt, and baked thyme. Cicadas sing their endless song, a buzzing lullaby that somehow never becomes annoying, just part of the sonic texture of the land. On the islands, you may find prickly pear cacti and fig trees heavy with fruit. In the villages, grapevines shade courtyards, and potted geraniums line whitewashed walls. Autumn brings the olive and grape harvests. In the hills, families gather to pick grapes for wine and raisins. Later, they'll shake olives from the trees, gather them in nets, and press them into oil, green, golden, or deep amber, depending on the region. In the mountains, chestnuts and walnuts fall. Mushrooms poke through damp leaves. It's a season of work and reward, of preparing for the winter to come. And winter does come, even in sunny Greece. Snow falls in the north, sometimes thick and deep. Bears hibernate, rivers swell. Migratory birds pass overhead. In some areas, shepherds bring their flocks down from the mountains. Fires are lit, pomegranates are cracked open. The land, though quieter, remains alive. Throughout all these seasons, nature in Greece is never just scenery, it is part of the culture. National parks protect rare ecosystems, from the Vikos Gorge in Epirus, one of the deepest in the world, to the wetlands of Messalongi, where herons glide through the reeds. Hiking trails lead to ancient sanctuaries and panoramic views. Conservation organisations work tirelessly to protect habitats and educate the public about the treasures hidden in plain sight. In recent years, ecotourism has grown in popularity. Visitors can join bird-watching tours in Thrace, volunteer with sea turtle conservation groups in the Peloponnese, or take guided herb walks through the hills of Crete. These experiences offer more than beautiful views. They offer a deeper understanding of the delicate, resilient ecosystems that have supported human life here for thousands of years. Even urban areas are full of life. In Athens, you might see green parakeets flitting through the trees of the National Garden. Tortoises sometimes appear in unexpected places, sunbathing in archaeological sites or waddling through suburban yards. Cats are everywhere, lounging on windowsills, dozing in cafes, wandering ancient alleys with the nonchalance of minor deities. In Greek culture, animals are often treated with affection and respect. Churches may have feeding stations for stray cats. Islanders leave out food for birds and dogs. Animal welfare is a growing concern, with local and international groups promoting spay-neuter programs and education. And through it all, the mythological still lingers. Ask a local about a strange sound in the forest or an animal behaving oddly, and you might hear a half-joking reference to a nymph, a satyr, or a long-forgotten spirit. These aren't beliefs so much as habits of imagination. In Greece, nature isn't just natural, it's enchanted. Every tree might be watching, every stone might remember, every breeze might carry a story. Because in this land of beasts and blossoms, the wild world is never far away. It walks beside the people. It hums in the background. It reminds everyone, gently, persistently, that life is more mysterious, more connected, and more beautiful than we often remember. And if you listen carefully, if you walk softly, if you pause long enough, you might just catch a glimpse, a flash of fur, a flutter of wings, a whisper through the leaves. And suddenly, you're not just a visitor in Greece, you're part of the story. Athens is a city that shouldn't make sense, but somehow, gloriously, it does. It's where ancient gods peer down from the Acropolis while delivery scooters buzz past souvlaki stands, where marble ruins and graffiti share wall space, where philosophers once debated in shady courtyards, now shadowed by concrete apartment blocks. And yet, despite the chaos, or perhaps because of it, modern Greece hums with a particular charm, a messy harmony of old and new. To understand modern Greece, start not in a museum or on a mountain, but in a cafe, preferably one with creaky chairs, a scattering of potted plants, and a few local characters already deep in conversation. Order a coffee, hot, strong, and preferably served in a tiny cup that could double as dollhouse tableware. Now settle in, watch, listen. You'll begin to notice that Greece today is not trapped in its past, nor completely consumed by the future. It lives somewhere in between. Athens, the capital and heart of the country, is a tangled tapestry of contradictions. The Acropolis looms above it all, eternally watching, but below, the streets swirl with graffiti-covered buses, buskers playing rebetiko tunes, and chic rooftop bars with craft cocktails and panoramic views. A walk through the city can take you from ancient columns to anarchist squats to artisanal bakeries, all within half an hour. It's a city of extremes. You'll see marble monuments beside crumbling buildings with fuchsia bougainvillea pouring over balconies. You might hear Byzantine chants echoing from a tiny chapel while a teenager blasts reggaeton from a Bluetooth speaker. A local might be reading Plato on the Metro app, but also scrolling TikTok to watch a parody skit set in a village with a goat named Maria. This is modern Greece. For many, life unfolds in a patchwork of past and present. Take the Periptero, the humble kiosk found on nearly every corner. Once a lifeline for snacks, cigarettes, newspapers, and gossip, it's now a little nostalgic, but still surprisingly relevant. Children still run up for gum, tourists stop for water, and older locals might linger for the news, even if they already read it online that morning. In the suburbs, life slows down. Neighbourhoods like Kifisia and Glyfada in Athens offer leafy streets, boutique shops, and a mix of high-end calm and Mediterranean bustle. In Thessaloniki, Greece's second city, the vibe is different, more laid back, more intimate, known for its food, its nightlife, and its deep love for coffee and conversation. Thessaloniki, with its mix of Ottoman, Jewish, and Byzantine history, feels both cosmopolitan and deeply Greek. Students spill out of cafes with philosophy books and opinions. Musicians jam in alleyways. Sunset walks along the waterfront are practically a civic ritual. Outside the cities, the pace changes again. Mainland villages, especially in the Peloponnese or the mountains of Epirus, hold tightly to their traditions. In some places, you might find Wi-Fi a bit spotty, but you'll likely find a table full of people enjoying lunch that began sometime before noon, and may still be going strong at dusk. Locals chat about the weather, politics, and whose olive oil press is working best this year. Even more distinct are the Greek islands, each with its own flavour. On Santorini, the whitewashed cave houses and sunset vistas make it feel like a postcard come to life. But peek behind the tourist path, and you'll find locals tending vineyards on volcanic soil or gathering for a quiet church festival. On Naxos, sheep outnumber people in some parts. On Ikaria, people joke that time runs differently, which might explain why so many residents live well into their 90s. Island life in winter is a different story. The tourists are gone, the beaches are empty, ferries run less frequently, and the sea feels a bit more wild. But this is when the islands breathe. Villagers gather in cafes, playing cards and sharing stories. Repair work begins. Orange trees ripen. People prepare for the next season, quietly, slowly. In some ways, this quiet off-season reveals the most authentic version of island life. Meanwhile, in the digital world, Greece is as plugged in as anywhere else. Young Greeks are on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, posting dances from Mykonos beaches, recipes from their grandmother's kitchens, or dry jokes about the chaos of Greek bureaucracy. Humour is a powerful current in Greek culture, and it thrives online. Satirical channels poke fun at everything from local politics to bad coffee. Memes abound about ferry delays, power outages, and the eternal struggle of parking in Athens. And yet, for all the modern flair, tradition still runs deep. Weddings are still huge affairs, with entire villages often invited. Baptisms remain elaborate and symbolic, with ornate candles and ceremonial clothes. Name days, celebrations of the feast day for the saint you're named after, can be even more important than birthdays. People cook for friends, open their homes, and sometimes even organise a small feast in honour of their namesake. Public life is lively. Markets bustle with vendors shouting about fresh figs, silver sardines, and tomatoes so fragrant they might actually change your life. Protest marches pass beneath apartment balconies hung with laundry. Street musicians strum the bouzouki or beat hand drums. Artists create murals in alleyways, their subjects ranging from the mythic to the political. The public square is still sacred in its own way, not just a place to gather, but a place to speak, to be seen, to belong. And the ferry. Oh, the ferry. It is both symbol and necessity. Whether you're heading to a party in Paros, a wedding in Syros, or just trying to get home for the weekend, the ferry is a ritual. You arrive early, ticket in hand. You climb aboard, maybe dragging a suitcase and a paper bag of pastries. You find a seat near the window. And then the boat pulls away, cutting a clean line through the Aegean. Islands rise on the horizon. The sun turns the water gold. And somewhere in that salty breeze, the present moment begins to soften. Ferries connect more than just land. They connect generations. Grandparents return to their native islands. Students go back to Athens. Tourists become travellers. There's something timeless about the hum of the engine, the gulls circling overhead, the little glasses of ouzo clinking in the onboard cafe. Speaking of transportation, Greece is an interesting mix. Public transit in cities is generally solid. Metros in Athens are clean and efficient. Buses rumble along with patent persistence. And taxis are affordable, if occasionally opinionated. Outside the urban areas, people often rely on cars or mopeds. On the islands, scooters and tiny hatchbacks rule the roads, weaving through narrow lanes past herds of goats and startled cats. Technology has found its place too. Remote work is growing, especially post-pandemic. Greece has begun attracting digital nomads with promises of sunshine, slower living, and surprisingly fast internet. Co-working spaces are springing up in Athens, Thessaloniki, and even on some islands. Cafes buzz with the sound of laptop keys and clinking cups. A programmer might be debugging code from a rooftop terrace. A writer might be editing a manuscript from a village with more donkeys than people. At the same time, the country is still dealing with serious economic and social challenges. The financial crisis of the early 2010s left deep scars. Many young people left in search of work abroad. Others stayed, navigating a job market marked by uncertainty. Even now, conversations often turn to wages, housing costs, and the rising price of olive oil. But resilience is something Greeks seem to carry like a birthright. Through wars, occupations, earthquakes, and austerity, the spirit of adaptation endures. There's a certain stubborn optimism, a belief that, as the saying goes, if we have bread and olives, we can survive anything. Community is a powerful force. Neighbours help neighbours. If someone is ill, meals appear at their doorstep. If a business is struggling, friends show up. Solidarity isn't just a word, it's a way of life. And while modern Greece is not without its struggles, it is also full of hope. Young Greeks are starting businesses, making art, organising festivals, and finding new ways to connect tradition with innovation. From ecotourism ventures in Zagori to music collectives in Thessaloniki, there's a sense of creativity quietly reshaping the future. In schools, children learn not just math and grammar, but mythology and poetry. In kitchens, grandparents teach the younger generation how to make dolmades or knead bread or prepare avgolemino soup just the right way. In churches, even as attendance fluctuates, candles are still lit with reverence. You see, Greece doesn't pick sides in the tug-of-war between past and present. It embraces both. It wears its history like a comfortable coat, sometimes patched, sometimes threadbare, but always proudly. And it moves forward, not with haste, but with a kind of rhythmic sway. Like a dancer stepping in time, adjusting as the music shifts. So whether you're watching the sun rise over Athens' rooftops, listening to a street musician in Thessaloniki, sipping mountain tea in a Pelion village, or catching a ferry through a haze of sea spray and late afternoon light, you're seeing Greece not just as it was, but as it is. Alive. complicated, beautiful, a country with its feet planted in myth, its hands full of olives, and its heart somewhere between a song and a story. And somehow, in all this noise and nostalgia, in all the screens and statues, Greece finds a way to feel timeless. Not because it never changes, but because, no matter what changes, it still feels like home. Greece is often imagined as a singular place, a sunlit land of whitewashed villages, blue domed churches, and long lazy meals beside the sea. But look just a little closer, and the picture begins to shift. The white walls give way to stone mansions. The sea breeze turns to mountain mist. The language bends into unfamiliar cadences. The bread changes shape. The music shifts key. This is the secret behind the postcard. Greece is not one Greece, but many. A mosaic of microcultures, each vibrant, rooted, and profoundly proud. Let us begin in Crete, not just an island, but a nation unto itself. Or so Cretans might tell you, half in jest, half in truth. This large mountainous island was fiercely independent, historically and culturally distinct. Its people are known for their resilience, their loyalty to tradition, and a deep sense of identity that stretches back to the Minoans, one of Europe's earliest civilizations. Cretan music is unmistakable. The lyra, a three-stringed bowed instrument, weeps and dances in equal measure, often accompanied by the lute and the soulful voice of a singer weaving tales of love, exile, and honour. The dances are fast, proud, and complex, especially the pentazali, whose steps are said to echo the steps of ancient warriors. The cuisine, too, is distinct. Cretans make liberal use of mountain greens, some edible, some medicinal, and prepare them with olive oil and lemon. Their dakos salad, made with barley rusk, chopped tomatoes, Misifera cheese, and oregano, is deceptively simple and deeply satisfying. Rolki, the local spirit distilled from grape skins, is served after meals, during conversations, at celebrations, or even to welcome guests. And if you're offered a glass, be warned, refusing it may be considered an act of personal betrayal. Cretan hospitality is legendary. Strangers are guests, guests are friends, and friends are fed until they're too full to stand. But hospitality doesn't mean formality. It means warmth, stories, and strong opinions delivered with equal parts passion and humour. Travel north to the region of Epirus, and you'll find a very different world. Tucked between rugged mountains and deep gorges, the villages of Zagori seem carved into the land itself. Stone houses with slate roofs, arched bridges over cold rivers, and winding cobblestone paths connect these remote settlements. Here, winter is long, the pace is slow, and the folk traditions run deep. Music in Epirus is haunting and modal, with clarinets playing slow, improvised laments called myrologia. These are songs of grief and memory, often performed at funerals or during the quiet hours of village life. The dances here are slower, more solemn, but no less powerful, carried in circles, hand to hand, foot to foot, heart to heart. The people of the north are often described as reserved compared to their southern neighbours. But beneath the stoic exterior lies a rich culture of hospitality, storytelling and pride. The cuisine leans toward hearty fare. Pies stuffed with wild greens, beans stewed in tomato, and thick bread baked in wood-fired ovens. In Macedonia and Thrace, the cultural texture becomes even more complex. These northern regions have long been borderlands, shaped by migrations empires and trade. You'll hear Slavic names, Turkish borrowings, and older echoes of Roman and Byzantine legacies. Villages here host festivals that blend Christian rituals with older pagan elements, like the Anastenaria, a fire-walking ceremony still practiced in some Thracian communities. In these regions, one often encounters brass bands rather than bouzouki ensembles. The music is lively, syncopated, and perfect for long, swirling dances that continue well into the night. Costumes worn during festivals include heavy embroidery, coins sewn into vests, and headscarves passed down through generations. Venture east to the Aegean Islands, and you'll see the influence of the sea in every aspect of life. The Dodecanese, the Cyclades, the North Aegean Islands. Each has its own dialect, cuisine, and tempo. On the island of Lesvos, ouzo is not just a drink, but a ritual, always accompanied by mezzides, small plates of octopus, sardines, olives, and cheeses. On Samos, you'll find sweet muscat wine and a long tradition of music infused with both joy and melancholy. The Cycladic Islands, think Paros, Naxos, and Amorgos, are known for their stark beauty, with minimal architecture and blinding light. But the culture here is anything but minimal. Folk dances are vital, poetic, and often accompanied by songs passed down orally from generation to generation. You might hear verses about unrequited love, sea voyages, or local history, sung over a rhythm that pulls the dancers around like the tide. In the Ionian Islands, such as Corfu, Kefalonia, and Zakynthos, the influence of Venice is impossible to miss. The architecture is full of arches and pastel facades. Music leans toward cantades, romantic serenades with guitar and mandolin. Corfu, in particular, boasts a strong tradition of philharmonic orchestras. Easter celebrations here are among the most elaborate in the country, complete with parades, processions, and the famous tradition of throwing clay pots from balconies to welcome spring. Then there's the Peloponnese, a vast peninsula that feels like a country in itself. From the stark cliffs of Mani to the fertile plains of Arcadia, every valley seems to tell a different story. Maniots, descendants of ancient Spartans, are known for their tower houses, dramatic history, and strict family codes. The dances of the Peloponnese are athletic and rhythmic, often performed with intense concentration and pride. In the central plains of Thessaly and Steria Elada, you'll find agricultural communities steeped in tradition. Folk songs accompany harvests, and festivals often revolve around the agricultural calendar. Dialects vary subtly, but the deeper you travel inland, the more you'll hear older forms of speech, including rare idioms and proverbs that encapsulate generations of rural wisdom. Even fashion tells a regional story. Traditional costumes in Greece vary drastically from one region to another. In the villages of Crete, men still wear black shirts and vraka, baggy woolen trousers, during festivals. In northern villages, women might wear embroidered vests, pleated skirts, and beaded headpieces passed down from great-grandmothers. On the islands, lighter fabrics and brighter colours prevail, often adorned with seashells, lace, and intricate needlework. These costumes are more than decorative. They are worn with pride, especially during national holidays and local festivals. Dancers might rehearse for weeks. Children are taught the meanings behind each element, and elders share stories of when these garments were worn in everyday life, not just for show, but for survival, courtship, and ceremony. And let's not forget language. While Greek is spoken nationwide, regional accents and dialects persist. In Crete, for instance, the rhythm and vocabulary are so distinct that even native Greek speakers sometimes need a moment to catch on. In Pontic communities, descendants of Greeks from the Black Sea region still speak a unique dialect, infused with Turkish and older Greek forms. In some mountain villages, Arvanitika or Vlach, languages descended from Albanian and Latin respectively, are still whispered between generations, though they're now endangered. Food, too, offers endless variation. In northern Greece, you might find spicy sausages, pickled vegetables, and dishes influenced by the Balkans and Asia Minor. In the islands, seafood reigned supreme: grilled octopus, squid stuffed with rice, and sun-dried mackerel marinated in vinegar. Inland, meals are richer: roasted lamb with potatoes, stews thick with cinnamon and clove, and hand-rolled pasta served with local cheese. Even the bread differs. In some villages, flatbreads are baked on hot stones. In others, round loaves are sprinkled with sesame or flavoured with aniseed. In festive seasons, bread becomes art, braided, twisted, or stamped with symbols of the occasion. And then there are the sweets, from honey-soaked leucomoids to almond-stuffed amygdalota, from the syrupy galactobareko to the simple joy of roasted chestnuts in winter. Dessert in Greece is a regional poem written in sugar and love. All these microcultures coexist not in isolation, but in conversation. Families might have roots in one village, work in another, and vacation on a completely different island. Weddings often become multicultural affairs, blending traditions from both sides of a family tree. Migration, war, trade, and tourism have all played their part in shaping a country that is at once unified and wonderfully diverse. But even with all these differences, there are common threads: a love of good food, a reverence for music, a deep respect for family and ancestry, a pride in place, and a belief that beauty, whether in a mountain vista, a melody, or a perfectly made pie, is worth pausing for. Perhaps that's the magic of Greece. Not that it offers one way of being Greek, but that it offers many and honours them all. It's a land where identity is layered, where stories are local and universal at once, where a journey of a few kilometres might bring you into a whole new world. So when you visit Greece, or even imagine it, it helps to think beyond the postcard. Look past the whitewashed houses and the turquoise seas. Look into the mountains, the forests, the valleys, and the narrow streets of forgotten villages. Listen to the dialects, taste the differences, feel the rhythm shift beneath your feet. Because here, in this home of many colours, you will find that Greece is not a single melody, but a whole symphony. 1,000 voices, 1,000 ways of being, and each one, in its own way, sings the same song, one of resilience, of memory, of belonging. In a country layered with centuries of story, the past is never just history. It is presence. It echoes in the names of children, in the rhythm of daily life, in the stones beneath your feet and the air above your head. Greece, perhaps more than anywhere else, walks beside its past with a kind of quiet familiarity, not as something to be put away in glass cases, but as something living, something that still asks questions. What does it mean to carry such a vast inheritance? And how do you dream forward when your roots go so deep? Walk through any town in Greece, and you are likely to pass a museum. Some are large and grand, like the Acropolis Museum in Athens or the Archaeological Museum in Thessaloniki. Others are humble, Small local spaces filled with pottery shards, worn coins, and sepia-toned photographs of people who once danced in the square just outside. But regardless of the size, these places share a purpose: to remember. At the ancient sanctuary of Delphi, where oracles once whispered the will of the gods, visitors now wander in reverent silence. The wind still rustles through the pines. The columns still stand proud against the sky. But now they carry a second meaning, not just as relics of belief, but as reminders of how long we have been asking the same questions. What is truth? What is fate? How should we live? At the Acropolis, where Athena's temple crowns the city, tourists snap photos while school children cluster around teachers who tell the story again, for the 100th time, for the 1000th. There is something both beautiful and impossible about trying to teach a child that the very ground they stand on was once walked by Socrates, by Pericles, by unnamed workers and slaves who carved marble for gods they feared and adored. It is not just history, it is inheritance. An inheritance, for modern Greeks, is a complicated gift. On one hand, there is immense pride, the birth of democracy, of theatre, of philosophy, of mathematical wonder, and architectural brilliance. All of this happened here. These are things the world still studies, still celebrates, still builds upon. But pride is not always easy. To inherit such a celebrated past can feel like standing in a shadow as much as in the light. What do you build when so much has already been built? How do you innovate without betraying what came before? In recent decades, many young Greeks have taken up this question, not with grand declarations, but through small, powerful acts of revival. Folk dance schools have seen a resurgence, not just in rural areas, but in cities. Teenagers gather after school to learn the steps their grandparents danced. They practice holding hands the right way, turning the right way, listening not just to the beat, but to the story behind the movement. Language apps and community groups now work to keep endangered dialects alive. Pontic Greek, once spoken along the Black Sea, now echoes in online forums, in music, in poetry. Vlach, Arvanitika, Cretan dialect, all are finding their voices again, even if softly. There is a sense that nothing is ever fully lost, only waiting to be remembered. Even traditional crafts are experiencing a renaissance. Young artisans are learning how to weave, to embroider, to carve, and to paint icons using the same techniques passed down through generations. But they are also experimenting, blending old patterns with new forms, ancient symbols with modern aesthetics. It is not nostalgia, it is dialogue. In Athens, Thessaloniki, and beyond, you'll find designers turning to ancient pottery for inspiration. Geometric motifs reappear in textiles. Jewellery once worn by Minoan priestesses now re-emerges in minimalist fashion lines. Modern Greeks are not simply replicating the past, they are remixing it. And this applies to food as well. While traditional dishes like chemista or moussaka are still beloved, there is a growing trend toward rediscovering and reinterpreting ancient and regional recipes. Restaurants now serve dishes based on archaeological research, like lentil stews flavoured with herbs used in classical times, or honey cakes made from formulas preserved on tablets. Cooking becomes a way of time travel, of honouring ancestors not just by telling their stories, but by tasting them. The conversation between past and present isn't only artistic, it's social, it's political. In recent years, Greek youth have faced immense challenges: economic crisis, unemployment, brain drain, climate anxiety. Yet many have responded not with despair, but with resilience, and often with a turn toward the roots. Community gardens are springing up in urban spaces. Traditional farming methods are being revived. Villages once nearly abandoned are welcoming back younger generations determined to live simply, sustainably, and close to the land. In some cases, families who emigrated decades ago are returning, bringing with them a hybrid identity, a mixture of memory and modernity. Tourism, too, is changing. While Greece has long been a magnet for sun-seekers and history buffs, more visitors are now looking for connection over checklist. Slow tourism, the idea of staying longer, going deeper, engaging with local culture, is growing. Visitors attend pottery workshops in Sifnos, olive harvests in Kalamata, or storytelling nights in Epirus. In return, Greeks are offering more than just views. They're offering roots. But perhaps the most intimate space where the past is reckoned with is not in museums or festivals. It is in memory. Ask a Greek person about their family, and you're likely to hear stories that span generations. The grandmother who survived war, the grandfather who built a house stone by stone, the aunt who knew every herb and every legend that went with it. This memory is carried not just in words, but in gestures. The way bread is broken, the way candles are lit, the way eyes glance at a church bell, not just to mark the hour, but to remember something older. And in this way, memory becomes not just a personal act, but a national one. Greece remembers collectively. Yet remembering does not mean standing still. The future is very much present in Greek life. Young Greeks are deeply engaged with global culture, starting businesses, writing books, creating films, coding software. They travel, they protest, they dream. But many of them do so with one foot firmly planted in the soil of home. Take the rise of Greek indie cinema. Directors like Yorgos Lanthimos have gained international acclaim, but the stories they tell are unmistakably Greek, unflinching, surreal, rooted in the peculiar magic and contradictions of this land. Or consider musicians who blend electronic beats with folk rhythms, creating sounds that feel both futuristic and ancient. There is no desire to escape the past, but there is a strong will to reimagine it. Not everything old must be preserved exactly as it was, but much of it can be carried forward, reshaped by new hands, given fresh breath. And sometimes the most powerful way to carry the past is simply to live with it. To sit on a bench beneath an olive tree planted 100 years ago. To walk across a stone bridge once used by Ottoman traders. To visit the family grave with your mother, light a candle, and remember a name. In Greece, the past is not gone. It lingers in the language. It leans out of balconies. It hums through radio songs and school textbooks and bedtime stories. It rides the ferry. It sits in the back of church. It swims in the sea. But it does not demand reverence at the expense of living. It simply asks to be remembered, to be included, to be heard. And the people, young and old, rural and urban, respond not with blind loyalty, but with love, with questions, with care. This is how Greece moves forward. Not in spite of the past, but with it, as a companion, as a challenge, as a guide. So when you wander through a village square and hear a child reciting poetry, or see a teenager wearing a t-shirt with a Cycladic figurine on it, or taste a dish cooked the same way it was centuries ago, You're witnessing more than just tradition. You're witnessing a living conversation. A conversation between echo and breath, between memory and invention, between what was and what might yet be. And in that space, in that dance between ruins and rooftop gardens, between myth and meme, between ceremony and spontaneity, Greece dreams. Not just backward, but forward. Always forward. Always with the past at its side, like a shadow, like a blessing, like a story still being written. Evening settles gently in Greece. It doesn't fall, it glides. The light softens. The air cools. Shadows stretch across old stone paths, and the hum of the day slows to a lullaby pace. As the last bit of sunlight spills over terracotta roofs, something ancient stirs. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, familiar rhythm. Greece knows how to say goodnight. It begins with sound. Church bells chime, not urgently, but with that soft, hollow echo that hangs in the air like incense. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once and then falls silent. Cicadas, those tireless composers of the Mediterranean summer, begin to fade, replaced by the slower, deeper chorus of crickets. In villages, children are called inside, their names echoing down cobbled lanes. In cities, the buzz of traffic thins out, replaced by the clink of glasses and the low murmur of conversation. Twilight in Greece is not just a time of day. It is a mood, a ceremony, a gentle invitation to pause. People step out onto balconies with small plates of olives and wedges of feta. Neighbours lean over railings, chatting about the day, trading recipes, gossip, weather updates, and family news. The pace of life doesn't just slow, it melts. Down by the sea, the last swimmers wade ashore, drying off in the breeze. Waves whisper along the sand, the rhythm more soothing than any lullaby. Cats, those ever-present sentinels of Greek streets, stretch in doorways, their day of prowling done. Some tuck themselves onto warm, stoned steps. Others follow waiters hopefully, tails curled like punctuation marks at the end of long sentences. There's food, of course. There's always food. Evening meals in Greece are unhurried affairs. Tables are laid outside, under pergolas strung with vines or beside narrow streets glowing with lamplight. Dishes arrive one by one, sometimes with ceremony, sometimes with a shrug. A plate of grilled sardines here, a bowl of creamy tzatziki there. Fresh bread, always. Maybe a tomato so ripe it might have been picked just moments ago. And wine. Not necessarily fancy, often from a plastic jug or poured from an unlabelled bottle, but it's good. Honest. The kind of wine that knows where it came from. Maybe it was pressed by an uncle, or bought from a neighbour, or bartered for eggs. It warms the cheeks, loosens the tongue, softens the stories. In these hours, stories flow easily. Tales of old loves, of ancient family disputes, of that one unforgettable festival night 10 years ago when the music never stopped. No one is in a rush. Time itself seems to take a seat at the table. The stars begin to appear, not all at once, but like guests at a gathering, arriving fashionably late. First the brightest, then the rest, until the sky becomes a dome of a soft, flickering light. If you're lucky enough to be far from the cities, the Milky Way reveals itself in streaks of silver, a reminder of how vast the world truly is, and how, even under this immense sky, Greece manages to feel like home. In the villages, old men might still be playing tavli, backgammon, outside the Cafeneo. The hands move quickly, but their expressions barely change. The game is as much about rhythm as it is about strategy. Slap the dice, slide the pieces, sip the coffee, repeat. No one is really keeping score. It's about being there, together, under the warm glow of familiarity. Further inland, in mountain towns and stone hamlets, fires flicker in halves. Maybe someone's roasting chestnuts. Maybe someone's heating wine with cloves. Winter nights in Greece can be cold, even snowy, but they are rarely lonely. Rooms are small, but hearts are wide. Blankets are thick, but so are the walls of hospitality. Even on the islands where the wind picks up after sunset, the night carries warmth, not just from the day's sun still stored in the stones, but from the life that pulses all around. The ferry lights blink on the horizon. The masts in the harbour creak. A guitar strums somewhere down a quiet alley. Someone sings. Someone else joins in. It's during these moments that you realise Greece is never entirely asleep. It drowses. It dreams. It sways in the night breeze. But even as eyelids close and footsteps quiet, something in the air stays watchful. The past, maybe? Or the olive trees, rustling with stories? Or the sea, forever whispering to the shore? The rituals of sleep here are familiar, but tinged with local flavour. Windows are opened, shutters closed just enough to keep the light out, but let the air in. Pillows are fluffed. Mosquito nets drawn, if needed. A fan hums softly in the corner, or else the lull of waves does the job. Some households still keep the tradition of the evil eye bead above the bed, just in case. Others may light a small candle or whisper a prayer. Not always out of superstition, but as a habit, a comfort, a tether to something older and bigger than oneself. And then comes the silence. Not total, never that. Greece is a land of murmurs. But it's a silence filled with soft things. The rustle of trees, the creak of a shutter, the sigh of a sleeper turning under the sheets. There's a myth, not as famous as the tales of gods and heroes, but cherished in quiet corners, about Hypnos, the god of sleep. He lived in a cave where no sun ever shone, surrounded by poppies and herbs that lulled the senses. He was gentle, never cruel, and touched the eyes of mortals with a feather dipped in dream. Perhaps he still walks here, along garden paths and rocky cliffs, unseen but not unfelt. Perhaps he waits by the sea until the last boat docks, or sits beside the baker who starts their work before dawn. Dreams come easily in this land. They rise with the mist, settle with the stars, and slip through the night like the wind through cypress branches. Some dreams are made of marble temples and wild olive groves. Others are simple. A grandmother's hands kneading dough, a child chasing fireflies, a cat purring beside a glowing window. And even if you're just visiting, even if you're only here in imagination, listening in bed from a world away, you can feel it. That hush, that breath, that ancient heartbeat slowing with the night. Because Greece, for all its myths and monuments, is also a lullaby, a soft voice in the dark, a place where the day ends not with a full stop, but with an ellipsis. Not with goodbye, but with Kalinita, good night. And somewhere out there, on a quiet balcony beneath a fig tree, someone is saying it. To the sky, to the stars, to the sleeping olive groves, Kalinita. May your dreams be slow. May your rest be deep. May your spirit wander just far enough to feel the magic of this ancient land, and still find its way home again. Greece lingers. It stays with you, not as a memory exactly, but as a texture, a scent, a soft blur of light on white stone. It weaves itself quietly into your mind like the last notes of a song you didn't know you were still humming. And if you've travelled through it, whether by boat or imagination, you'll know this. Greece is not simply a place to visit. It's a place to return to. Again and again, in thought, in story, in dream. What makes a place feel like that? It's not just the beauty, though. That certainly helps. Greece is full of beauty, the bold kind that stands out in a photograph, and the subtle kind you only notice when you slow down. A cracked amphora holding geraniums, a piece of old lace hanging in a window, a line of laundry fluttering above an alleyway with shadows dancing on stone. The country is made of moments so quiet they might slip by unnoticed, and yet they are the ones that stay. It's also not just the history, though there's more than enough to fill a lifetime of books. Greece doesn't wear its history like a crown. It wears it like a well-loved jacket. A bit frayed in places, patched and mended, but comfortable and familiar. You walk beside it. You sit down with it at the cafe. You feel it in the curve of a staircase, the softness of a church pew, the hum of a melody your grandparents might have danced to. But more than anything, what makes Greece a place of endless return is how it makes you feel. Welcomed, humbled, and somehow known. It invites you to pause, to pay attention, to taste slowly, to listen deeply, to sit for a while with no agenda, but simply being present. There is a calm here that isn't silent, but steady. A kind of unhurriedness that doesn't mean idleness, but presence. The sea does not rush. The mountains do not shout. Even the wind, when it comes, speaks in a voice that seems older than language. This is a country that encourages wandering, not just across geography, but within yourself. You start by following a trail to a ruined temple, but end up lost in thought about time, purpose, the weight of names. You order a simple meal of bread and olives and end up tasting your way through centuries of labour and land. You watch the sunset over a village square, and somehow it becomes a meditation. And yet, for all its tranquility, Greece is also full of life. Vibrant, contradictory, passionate life. Markets that burst with colour and noise. Festivals that light up sleepy towns with music and fireworks. Conversations that leap from politics to poetry to laughter in the space of a heartbeat. This is not a country frozen in time. It is very much alive. The children playing soccer in the streets, the grandmothers sitting in the shade spinning tales, the fishermen mending their nets with practised hands. Each is a thread in the larger tapestry. They are not relics, they are the heartbeat, and they remind us that to truly understand a place, we must look not only at what was built long ago, but also at what is being lived now. And then there is the light. Greece glows, even in memory. The way sunlight reflects off white walls, the golden haze over olive trees, the silvery gleam of moonlight on the sea. It's hard to describe, but easy to remember. Even in winter, when skies darken and waves rise, there's a clarity in the air that sharpens the edges of things and makes even the simplest landscape feel significant. So perhaps that is what this journey has been. A long, slow gaze across a country that holds complexity with grace. A place where gods once walked among mortals, and where mortals now walk their dogs past temples. Where the divine and the everyday still meet at corners, both sacred and ordinary. And as you drift towards sleep, or reflection, or simply stillness, it's worth remembering that Greece has always been more than geography. It is an idea, a longing, a lullaby, a question whispered across time. What is beauty? What is truth? What does it mean to be home? There are no final answers, only places where the asking feels welcome. Greece is one of those places. So, whether you found yourself on a sun-drenched island or a shadowy mountain trail, in a crowded taverna or a silent chapel, in the pages of a myth or the lines of a poem, thank you for wandering with care. Thank you for noticing. And if, at any point, your eyes grew heavy and your mind began to drift, well, that too is very Greek. The gods themselves were known to nap beneath olive trees. The philosophers knew the value of quiet, and no one here is in a hurry, especially not when it comes to dreaming. May your sleep be soft, your dreams full of light, and your heart a little closer to the Aegean than it was before. Greece will be here, waiting, always. There is a stillness that settles in once the journey comes to an end. It isn't silence, not quite, but a gentle quiet, like the last pages of a book turning themselves. If you've walked with Greece from the olive groves of Crete to the mountain villages of Epirus, from the blue haze of the islands to the gold-lit ruins of ancient cities, you might feel it now, that sense of lingering, that sense of something both complete and eternal. And in this quiet you begin to remember, not just the facts or the places, but the feelings they stirred. You remember the scent of time carried on a warm wind, the texture of rough stone under your hand, the sound of a church bell ringing in an empty valley. These are not souvenirs. These are echoes. And Greece, as it so often does, echoes long after the journey ends. You may recall the myths first. They're hard to forget. The stories of gods who loved and warred and turned into animals at inconvenient moments. Of heroes with impossible choices and even more impossible destinies. These stories, while thousands of years old, still shimmer with relevance, not because we believe them literally, but because they speak in metaphor, in poetry, in the timeless language of the human heart. The tale of Icarus isn't just about wax and feathers. It's about the tension between curiosity and caution. The Odyssey isn't just about sea monsters and singing women. It's about trying to find your way home. But Greece isn't only its myths. It's also its history. And that history is staggering in its depth. A civilization that gave the world democracy, philosophy, theatre, medicine, astronomy. Streets where Socrates once argued. Temples where Pericles once prayed. Agoras where citizens once voted, debated, built and dreamed. And the miracle is not just that these places still exist, but that they're part of everyday life. In Greece, the ancient isn't fenced off. It's folded in. It's there beneath the cafes, next to the parking lots, behind the fruit stands. You can stumble across a Roman mosaic on your way to get milk. You can have lunch with a view of a 2,000-year-old column. And yet, as you might now know, Greece's power doesn't lie only in what has survived from the past. It lives in the present. In the songs sung at weddings. In the way a grandmother teaches her granddaughter to roll grape leaves. In the way people raise their glasses, not with cheers, but with "to your health." In the local festivals where teenagers dance alongside elders, not out of obligation, but out of pride. It lives in the modern poets, The musicians who blur the lines between folk and pop, the activists planting seeds for the future. It lives in graffiti on city walls and in the quiet acts of kindness between neighbours. It lives in a language that has changed over centuries, but still carries ancient roots in its rhythm. And as you sit now, perhaps at the edge of wakefulness, perhaps already half adrift, you might begin to feel that you haven't just learned about a place. You've been changed by it. Not in a grand, dramatic way, but subtly, gently. Greece has a way of shifting something inside you. It slows you down. It teaches you to notice, to savour, to rest without guilt, to linger at the table, to listen to the wind. You might even start to feel like time itself is different there. Not slower, exactly, but less rigid. In Greece, time curves like the coastline. It dances. It meanders. You wake up late and sleep late. You eat when you're hungry, not when the clock says it's lunchtime. You spend hours over a meal, not because the food takes that long, but because the company is too good to leave. And this too is part of what stays with you. The way people make space for one another. The way no one leaves a table without being full. The way a conversation can last all afternoon. The way hospitality isn't an industry, it's a philosophy. You are not a guest in Greece. You are a welcome part of the story. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about Greece is how it teaches without trying to. There is no lecture, no pressure, just example after example, quietly lived. A farmer tending his olive trees, a young woman reviving her grandmother's embroidery patterns, a group of friends sitting on a stoop, laughing at nothing in particular. And from these moments, something seeps in. A way of living, a way of being. Not perfect, of course. Greece has its struggles, economic challenges, political tensions, social complexities. But even those are met with a kind of resilient grace. A shrug, a joke, a determined meal cooked for family anyway. The belief that things can be hard and beautiful at the same time. That laughter and loss can share a table. That joy doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet morning, a good tomato, a breeze through open shutters. This, in the end, is what Greece gives most generously. Not just its past, not just its beauty, but its way of seeing the world. Its reminder that the ordinary is sacred, that food is best when shared, that stories are best when told slowly, that time spent together is never wasted, that there is poetry in olives and truth in songs. You may never see every village or swim in every sea, but that's the thing about Greece. You don't have to. Even a glimpse is enough to feel its rhythm. Even a single evening on a quiet terrace, the stars above and a warm plate in front of you can carry the essence of the entire country. You don't have to do everything. You just have to be there. And now, as this journey comes to its final breaths, there's a sweetness to that realization. That you've travelled far, in space or spirit, and found not just a country, but a rhythm, a gentler pace, a voice that doesn't shout but sings. Maybe you're listening from your bed, lights dimmed, phone set on the nightstand. Maybe you've already begun to drift. That's okay. Greece has always been a place of dreams, a land where the divine and the domestic live side by side, where gods watched over goats, where myths sprouted from fields, where sleep and story are never far apart. So let this be your last moment here tonight. A quiet breath, a soft goodbye, but not forever. Greece, like all good stories, doesn't really end. It waits, it rests. And when you're ready again, whether next month or next year or in the silent spaces of your mind, it will be there. Every journey, no matter how gentle, deserves a final pause, a moment to simply breathe in what has been and let it settle. You've travelled through a land where stories grow as naturally as olives, where light plays its own quiet music across marble and sea, and where the ancient and the present don't just coexist, they lean into each other like old friends. This journey through Greece may be coming to a close, but what lingers is the truth that you've never been walking alone. You've been accompanied by a country that speaks softly, but with deep conviction. It's hard to summarise Greece, because Greece refuses to be summarised. It's a land of paradoxes, held together by the sheer poetry of existence. It is old, impossibly old, and yet it always feels like it is unfolding in real time. It is proud and humble. It is chaotic and deeply peaceful. It offers you myths carved into stone, and also the kind of quiet you only find when the breeze through a pine tree sounds like a lullaby. What stays in the heart after a long passage through this country is not just what you saw or even what you learned. It's what you felt. A sense of timelessness, yes, but also something even more elusive. A sense of enoughness, of arriving, not to the end of a road, but to the beginning of a relationship, with the land, with the stories, and maybe with something inside yourself. It's often said that Greece lives between three elements: earth, sea, and sky. But there is a fourth element too: memory. Not just the memory of a people, but the memory of the land itself. The stones seem to remember footsteps. The waves remember names. The trees remember prayers whispered 1,000 years ago. You don't have to be Greek to feel it. You just have to be still long enough to listen. And in that stillness, something subtle happens. Greece teaches you how to be in the world a little differently. Not louder, not faster, but more attentively. To notice the golden crack in the wall, the way the bread is passed at the table, the sound of someone softly singing to themselves on a shaded porch. These are the kinds of things that modern life often rushes past. Greece invites you to pause, and in that pause, to live more fully. It's tempting to think of this country only in terms of what's been lost. Temples ruined, civilizations fallen, languages faded. But Greece is not a land of ruins. It is a land of roots. What has survived here is not just architecture or philosophy, but a worldview. A way of holding contradictions in harmony. A way of finding the sacred in the everyday. Take the olive tree, twisted, ancient, resilient. It offers fruit, shade, oil, and wood. It does not grow quickly. It doesn't need to. Its roots go deep, and its presence is quiet but enduring. In many ways, the olive tree is Greece. Grounded, generous, patient, and always, always alive. Or think of the sea. Not just as a postcard perfect backdrop, but as a force that has shaped every aspect of Greek life. It is both a barrier and a bridge. It connects islands and carries stories. It has brought trade, tragedy, invaders, and inspiration. And yet it never loses its calm authority. It simply continues, like time, like myth. And then there is the sky, wide, open, forgiving. Whether pierced by mountaintops or stretched above villages, it always seems just a little bluer here, a little more expansive, perhaps because it reflects the Aegean, or perhaps because so many prayers have risen into it that it has become a chapel in its own right. These are not just poetic symbols. They are invitations to slow down, to look up, to root yourself where you are. Whether you're sipping coffee under a fig tree or standing on a crowded metro, the spirit of Greece whispers, "You are here." And that is enough. In a world that often asks us to chase, to produce, to perform, Greece offers a different rhythm, one shaped not by clocks, but by bells, not by deadlines, but by seasons, not by algorithms, but by appetite, hunger not just for food, but for connection, for beauty, for story. It is not a perfect country. No place is. But it is a country that has made peace with its imperfections, that has turned hardship into song, that has learned to laugh through tears, that knows the value of dancing, even if the music is a little out of tune. And so perhaps what Greece gives most generously is not its beaches or its ruins or even its cuisine, though those are all worth celebrating. What it gives is a quiet kind of wisdom, the kind that doesn't shout or insist, but lingers. The kind you only notice after you've left, when you catch yourself stirring your coffee a little slower, or stepping out into the evening light just to feel it on your skin. You may find yourself remembering things you didn't even know you noticed. The way a cat curled up in a windowsill, the echo of footsteps in an empty museum, the way someone you'd never met offered you fruit from their garden with no expectation but that you enjoy it. These memories are gifts, and like all true gifts, they come without strings. Greece does not demand anything from you. It simply asks that you be present, that you carry its stories carefully, that you return, not necessarily in person, though you might, but in thought, in appreciation, in small, slow rituals that bring you back to yourself. And perhaps that's what this journey has been, a return, not to a destination on a map, but to a part of yourself that is often forgotten in the noise, the part that longs to sit under a tree and do nothing but listen to the wind, the part that believes in myths, the part that doesn't mind not knowing everything, so long as the stars are visible. As this final chapter draws to its close, you may feel sleepy, or peaceful, or simply still. That is by design. Greece does not rush you to conclusions. It lets the story end the way all good stories do, not with a bang, but with a breath. What is history and what is myth? Where does one end and the other begin? Is a place only its past, or is it something more? A feeling, a rhythm, a way of seeing the world. These were the quiet questions we began with, as we set off gently into the heart of Greece. And now, after wandering through sunlit courtyards and olive groves, over marble ruins and into the flicker of candlelit tavernas, we find ourselves circling back, not with neat answers, but with a fuller sense of the questions themselves. Because maybe that's the point. Maybe Greece isn't a puzzle to solve, but a poem to sit with. Maybe it's less about facts and timelines, and more about how it makes you feel when the cicadas start up at dusk, or when someone hands you a glass of something strong and homemade and says, "Welcome." Maybe history is not just in museums and myths, but in the way a grandmother folds her apron, or the way laughter echoes across a square at midnight. Maybe myth isn't something you outgrow, but something you grow into, a way of carrying wonder into the everyday. And maybe, just maybe, the best journeys aren't the ones that answer everything, but the ones that change the way you ask. So as this slow voyage comes to an end, I invite you, once again, to rest easy, Let the weight of the day fall away. Let your mind wander like a breeze over the Aegean. Let the stories we've shared settle into dreams. And if your eyes are still open, I'll gently ask, where in the world are you listening from? What time is it where you are? And did this video make you a little too curious to sleep? Or just sleepy enough to dream? If you enjoyed this journey, a like and a subscription would mean the world. It helps this little channel continue exploring softly into the night. And I'd love to know, what part of Greece stayed with you? Or what place should we wander through next? And finally, as always, this video is for relaxation and reflection. It is not medical advice, nor a substitute for sleep care from a health professional. Now, breathe, close your eyes, and may the questions you carry tonight be soft, curious companions, just like Greece.